to our New York City campus on behalf of University President Marvin Krislov, who could not be here this evening. For a moment, you are enjoying our new student union space, which we just did our ribbon cutting on this past January. We are very proud to host this event, as we have done numerous times on previous occasions, to host public hearings for our federal, state, and local elected officials. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Michael Mushlin from Pace University Law School.
Thank you very much. Wow. I'm not used to that. Thank you. I've been asked to welcome you, give another welcome to you at this important event about how to implement the plan to close Rikers Island by building 4 local jails in the boroughs of this city, including one in Manhattan, not far from here. That is the focus of today's hearing. I applaud President Gale Brewer for convening this meeting. I suppose I was wondering why I was chosen to welcome you, and I think because of all the many people at Pace University who could have welcomed you, I probably have had as much involvement over a longer time with Rikers Island than anyone at the university. Because of that involvement, I was asked to speak to you individually just for a few minutes, not to give you, and what I'm going to say is not the official position of Pace University. Over 4 decades ago, I was the head of the Prisoners' Rights Project of the Legal Aid Society of New York City at an office just over on Park Row. We were a small office charged with the task of using whatever legal skills we had to address appalling conditions of confinement in New York City jails. In an attempt to bring the rule of law to the operation of our city's penal institutions. The Constitution of the United States of America guarantees that every person is entitled, who is held in a penal institution, is entitled to conditions that don't jeopardize human dignity and that don't threaten their safety and that doesn't destroy their lives. Sadly, that was not the case in New York City. Then, and for many years since, and today, it is still not the case. In our work back those 4 decades ago, we saw Rikers Island up close and personal. We saw a remote place where horrible things happen daily to people who are held there, as well as to people who work there. Rikers is poorly designed, it's expensive to operate, it's distant from the courts, it's distant from attorneys, it's distant from families, it's distant from the communities to which the overwhelming number of people who are held there will inevitably return. There's a culture on Rikers Island that is a culture of brutality, that is a culture of meanness, that is a culture of violence. Rikers harms not only the people who go there, it harms the millions of people who don't. It harms me as a citizen of this city. It does nothing to uplift anyone or to make us safer. So what we saw at Rikers Island and what Rikers Island is today is a stain on what I consider to be a great city. So Rikers Island must be closed. But accomplishing that is not easy. It's often not easy to do what's right. That is certainly the case here, which is why public events like this are so essential. But it's worth the effort. When, after this arduous process ends, the day will come, and I'm sure it will come, when Rikers Island is finally closed. When that day comes, we're going to have a better city. We're going to have a safer city. We're going to have a city that is a world city that can proudly face the world and that does well by its citizens. We will have a city that we can take pride in. So I welcome you to this hearing, and I look forward to hearing your comments, and I'm turning it over now to President Brewer.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you, Pace. And I want to thank also the New York City DOC Commissioner Tim Farrow and everyone from Community Board 1, but particularly Anthony Notaro. And I'm sure there are people here from Community Board 3. And I am Gale Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I'm deeply appreciative of each person who's here tonight. I do want you to know that this hearing is being live streamed, so you can see it on your phone or your computer. It's facebook.com/Gale Brewer, GALEBREWER, and it'll be available on our Manhattan BP website after the hearing. If you want to testify, I think you know you have to fill out a form. You'll have 2 minutes to testify, but if you want to take a little bit longer, just tell me to ask you a question. Tell me what the question is, and I'll ask it, so you can talk a little bit longer. There is an overflow room. But also, in addition, you can also, if you don't want to wait, you can give your testimony just outside in that other room, and it will be on video if you want. And so we will be taking every single comment seriously. I also want to thank Dana Kaplan, who's here from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. I know she has been here a lot, and I'm deeply appreciative. And I see Tara DeVera from our office, and look who else is here. Thank you very much for joining us. So I am just going to be very quick just to tell you what we have done in our office. I know this is a very challenging topic. How many people have been to Rikers Island, one way or another? Well, that's a good number. Okay. I just want to know so that people understand what Rikers is. But anyway, I am really happy that you're here. We're talking about the possibility of the Borough-Based jail at 124-125 White Street. We know that this particular proposal, along with the other ones in the other boroughs, is going through the Uniform Land Use Review process, which is basically ULURP and also is the zoning process. And just to give you a sense of what has been going on June 3rd, Community Board 1 issued a thoughtful recommendation on the proposal for the Borough-Based jail. They took a lot of time to come up with their suggestions. It's on their website. And then on Board 3, which borders this particular location, they too took into consideration and issued a very thoughtful proposal. Those boards have been working really hard. On July 3rd, under the ULURP time clock, we in the Borough President's Office will issue our recommendation, and then it goes to the City Planning Commission. How many people have been through a zoning process before? All right, so a lot of you know. City Planning Commission has 60 days to review the proposal, and they too will have a hearing. We all need to show up. City Planning will vote on the proposal at the end of their period, and unlike the Community Board recommendations and my recommendations, because we are advisory, I want to be clear. The City Planning Commission's vote will either stop the project or allow it to proceed. My guess is it will proceed because you know politics as well as I do. If City Planning votes to approve, then it will move to the City Council. And the City Council has 50 days to review, and then it will vote, and that will be the final decision. Just so you know, in the past 2 years, I didn't start thinking about this recently because we wanted to have as much thought as process. Along with Councilmember Chin and the city, we've been working with the community to ensure that all stakeholders are involved. It's been a lot of work, and I want to thank many of you in the room because you have participated. When the plan was first announced, unlike the other boroughs, and I love the other boroughs, and I love the other borough presidents, but they didn't have a task force early on. We did, and thank you, Manhattan. We had a Rikers task force made up of community organizations, businesses, residents, criminal justice advocates to have a discussion and to develop what is going to happen if and when Rikers closes. The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, thank you very much, was present. They created after and incorporated our task force with their neighborhood advisory committee. And there were more people, which is wonderful, from the community who participated, looking at design, process, construction, all the issues of a building. They offered a set of guidelines and recommendations, which are also available online, and there are copies at the table. So the task force and this neighborhood advisory committee are all working together. Recently, we put them all together for sure, and we're calling it Jails, Justice, and Community. We're going to continue talking. This is too complicated an issue to just have a hearing, to just rely on the process. People need to participate. And the purpose is to continue the conversations around the plan to close Rikers and to ensure that the plan to address all criminal justice issues are centered around the needs of the community in the facility and in the community. Both are center of our discussions. I know that criminal justice reform is a step toward remedying racial disparities that have impacted communities of color forever. We have come from a system that detained over 20,000 New Yorkers daily in the 1990s to a system, as I understand it, some may have more up-to-date numbers, but around 7,494 detainees. That's the most recent number I have. Advocates have worked to shift the focus from punishment to one that addresses the underlying issues of poverty and mental health and substance abuse, all of which I know a lot about from my family. We have finally realized that jails do nothing to address these problems. People should not be in jail because they are poor or because they are not well. Hundreds of thousands of people have been impacted by jails and Rikers, and everyone in this room knows that. It includes those who are serving short sentences, their families, the defenders, all of whom spend hours working to secure due process. Rikers will close. I think it should. But in moving toward this goal, there have been many changes at the city and state level, and congratulations to the people here who have been working on this. Bail reform, long overdue, has lowered incarceration rates. Apparently, we now have the lowest incarceration rate of any large city, but I never know what that means because it should be lower. And we will continue to work towards further reductions in our population through legislation and really strong programming for people who need it and who do not need to be incarcerated. So I want to thank the elected officials and many people in this room for all the work. It's not easy. However, despite these advances in justice reform, the reality is it is late for some people. Too late. We know that this past Friday, Leilene Polanco, a trans woman, held on just a $500 bail and placed in solitary confinement, was found dead in her cell. And I understand it was for some misdemeanors, which is even worse. And she'd been there for a couple of months. Nothing to make up for that loss. I understand loss. I've had a lot of it. Her friends and family's lives will never be the same. I understand that. This tragedy highlights the need for change and underscores the sense of urgency. It is very, very urgent, everything that we're talking about tonight. So, we are presented with a borough-based jail plan from the administration. This proposed plan would bring new facilities to all the boroughs, but we're talking about Manhattan. The new facilities bring detainees close to their families, lawyers, and other service providers. The placement and design of the facilities will be effective at keeping people out of the criminal justice system if it is done correctly. However, these facilities, due to their size and scale, do have impacts that must be considered as we review these proposals. Tearing down the facilities on White Street, we know that building very well, and constructing a building that's tall will have negative impacts on community residents. And I want to thank the Chinatown community because you have been very vocal, very articulate, very measured, and very terrific. I'm very concerned about the small businesses and the people, but definitely the small businesses. I spent my whole life fighting for mom and pops, and you have nothing but great businesses in Chinatown. Mitigating effects in these instances and eliminating them altogether should be our goal. But I need to hear from you. You're the experts. So I look forward to hearing from you tonight about the Manhattan site and your concerns. And I want to be clear, every concern will be taken very seriously. We need to do it right in Manhattan. I don't know about those other boroughs, but I'm damn sure we're going to do it right in Manhattan. Thank you very much. And so now I believe we're going to hear from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice and Community Affairs. So I don't know, Dana, if you want to speak here or from there, either one, whatever you want to do.
I'll go there so I can click.
Dana Kaplan, and she's been to a lot of meetings. Thank you very much, Dana.
So thank you, Borough President, for hosting this meeting and for, I think, what has been incredible leadership on this issue. The other person on the panel is Joseph Thomas with the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, and I'm also joined here by a number of different colleagues from different city agencies. So as the Borough President mentioned, I have been at some meetings, and so I imagine that there are many people here are familiar with what the proposal is and what the plan is to close Rikers, but I am going to go through it. I know that the purpose of this is really to hear from the public, so I will try to be, is it not? Okay. I will try to be expeditious in my comments so we can get to the important part of the evening. So exactly, let me see if I can. There. Great. So exactly as was said earlier, an important part of this plan in the context of closing Rikers is this significant effort in the city of New York to reduce the number of people in incarceration. And so central to this is a focus on how do we reduce the number of people in jail on a given day, how do we transform the culture of our city's detention facilities, and how do we design better borough-based facilities that serve that goal. So we had over 22,000 people in detention on a given day in New York City in the 90s. That number dropped to 11,000 or about 11,500 when the mayor took office. It is under 7,500 today. So that's down 60% since its peak, down 30% since the mayor took office. And we are planning to have no more than 4,000 people in detention as we move towards the closure of Rikers. And I will say that that number has been updated. Our target was 5,000 as a result of the incredible effort by many different community and advocacy organizations, many of them in this room. We have seen legislative reform on issues such as bail, speedy trial, and discovery that has already seen significant progress. And again, we are planning for a target population of no more than 4,000 people in detention. I think that there was an important explanation in the beginning as to why we're closing Rikers, so I won't spend too much more time on that, but just really quickly so that we can kind of keep that as the, the framework of the purpose of this all. The facilities themselves are not up to the standards that we consider appropriate or dignified. There's challenges just in terms of design, the programming space, recreation, but the location, in addition to the facilities themselves, are also a huge concern. It's a challenge for loved ones to visit the people in detention. It's a challenge for attorneys to visit their clients. And it is a challenge to bring people from detention every day to the courts. So what do we believe are the goals of a closing Rikers and a borough-based detention system? So at the highest level, we think that this is going to be better for people in detention and better for facility staff. So smaller housing units with better lines of sight, with more programming and recreation space and room for services is better, again, for people who are held in the facilities and also can assist our culture change and violence reduction efforts, which is better for facility staff. We know that those better outcomes have a positive impact on public safety across the board and can have a positive impact on recidivism. So we believe that closing Rikers will assist us in continuing to reduce the number of people that come into contact with our city's jail systems and criminal justice systems. And we believe that it will also prove more efficient in terms of streamlining the ability to bring people from detention to the courts, again, allowing better attorney-client visits, better access to service providers to help develop plans for neighborhood reintegration. I'm very honored to do this work, and we are honored to do this work at the mayor's office. But we know that the work that we are doing right now to close Rikers Island is incorporating and comes on the heels of a tremendous amount of effort and consideration on this issue that predates us and predates this administration altogether. We have been considering and looking at things such as the Littman Commission report. And we also, things such as the task force that Gale Brewer convened, but also have developed our own community and neighborhood advisory structures to continue to develop and incorporate community impact, input, and feedback into this. Some of the things that we wanted to just emphasize and highlight that are part of our core commitments and specific to the Manhattan location, and these are things that we have heard are key neighborhood concerns, is that we are committed to not displacing any of the seniors living in Chung Pak's facility during the process of demolition construction or with the new facility. We are working right now to develop a plan for those small businesses at the Manhattan Detention Center because we do know that relocation will be disruptive and we want to ensure that we can accommodate that and be able to address that challenge as best we can. We don't have plans right now for the future use of Rikers Island, but we agree that this is something that can be a positive asset for the city of New York. And as we've stated publicly, we are committed to launching a participatory planning effort through which New Yorkers will help formulate a vision for Rikers Island.
But no developers allowed.
Certainly. We are focused on community investments associated with all four proposed sites. We understand that the neighborhood needs and considerations are things that have to be factored into this public approval process. And as we think about how these facilities will best integrate with the neighborhoods. And we also have heard that there is a concern and a continued concern over the years about placard abuse. And so not only are we focused on continued increased enforcement, but also the implementation of our new policies on that. So really quickly in terms of the program for the Manhattan facility. So as we said, the plan is to close the jails on Rikers Island and replace those the 8 active jails on Rikers Island and the 3 facilities that are currently in operations at the borough level with 4 proposed sites for a total capacity of housing no more than 4,000 individuals. Our ULURP application required 5,750 beds, and we will be amending the ULURP to reflect the change to require no more than 4,600 beds. That means that it would be ultimately about 1,150 beds at each site. Again, just some context for this. Our current detention capacity in New York City is just over 11,000 with the closure of GMDC. So we're talking about a more than 50% reduction in the number of beds available for detention in New York City. And again, moving from 11 active detention facilities to 4. We are continuing the focus on evidence-based programming to reduce recidivism, reentry, and community engagement. We know that as we talk about this facility, we cannot talk about it without understanding how connected it is to culture change. I'm sorry. Whoops. So at the Manhattan site, as I think said right now in the ULURP application, there's 1,437 beds. We will be amending that to reflect the smaller number as a result of legislative reform. It has a maximum height right now of 450 square feet. That is something that we will also be amending as we understand what the impact is of that smaller jail detention number. It will provide estimated parking for 125 spaces. And it will maintain the White Street corridor or the White Street as a pedestrian access point. So there will no longer be cars allowed on White Street or vehicular traffic, but it will be open to pedestrian traffic. We're not in the design phase, but a rendering of what it could be. We can happy to go back and stay on that one. So in terms of what the ULURP actions are that are required, the system-wide action, site selection for borough-based jails, text amendment to create a borough-based jail system, special permit, and then specific to Manhattan, a special permit that sets the FAR, other bulk, accessory loading, and city map change and acquisition. Again, there's a number of different people from city agencies and other colleagues in the mayor's office who can answer more specific questions. And finally, just moving ahead to where we are. Of course, we are in the public approval process, so all of this is contingent on public approval and the review process. Right now, as stated by the borough president, we are in the stage of borough president review, after which it will go to the city planning commission, after which it will go to the city council for a final vote. And assuming that we have public approval of this process, that allows us to move ahead with procurement, design, and construction, and a final close date of 2026 for all of the jails on Rikers Island. And I should also just make explicit that as part of this process, we are also committed to closing the barge. And I think that that is it for my presentation. As I said, there are a number of individuals that can take questions, but most importantly tonight, we're here to, also hear the comments made by the public.
Thank you very much, Dana. So next, we're going to hear from Richard Aborn, who is a member of the Littman Commission. Come on up, Richard, if you'd like. I also want to thank G.D. Lee, Chief of Staff in Councilmember Chin's office, for being here, and Alicia Lewis Coleman, CB3 Chair. Again, thank you, Board 1 and Board 3.
Thank you so much, Gale. My name is Richard Aborn. I am here to represent the Littman Commission, also known as the Rikers Commission. I will tell you that I'm also representing the Crime Commission, which is an organization dedicated to reducing violence in our city through innovation. Before I start, however, I would just like to call out Gale for 1 second, if I may, and not only thank you.
He's my neighbor. That's the only reason he's doing it.
Not only thank her for doing this, but thank you, Gale, for your years of dedicated, effective public service. It's just been fantastic. I knew she was going to do that. So you've already heard from 3 speakers, and you're going to notice a pattern to these comments, particularly around the core issue as to why we're here. And I'm actually not going to depart from that, because I think it's very important as we start thinking about the details of this to always remember why it is we are all here tonight. And it's this. It is what we call the moral imperative. The moral imperative is when the law exercises its most awesome power, which is to take away somebody's liberty. Thank heavens we don't have a death penalty in this state. But when you take away somebody's liberty, you have an obligation to treat them with respect, with dignity, to keep them safe, and to help them achieve a status where they are much better off leaving your facility than when you entered it. Right now, Rikers does the opposite. And that is the core reason why, in our view, Rikers needs to be closed, and it needs to be closed as soon as humanely possible. Every day that that institution is open is a day that is contrary to the public interest. It should not stand. Many people have said to me, but isn't it actually more dangerous to close Rikers, and isn't it actually more dangerous to reduce the number of people that are not getting bail or not getting jail time, etc.? And it's interesting to learn that it's actually the opposite. In our view, spending time at Rikers actually increases the tension, the trauma, the sense of betrayal, the sense of violence that a person is exposed to. And to have a person in those conditions then come out and expect them, without any sort of help at all, step into a normal life is silly. We just cannot be that way. So we think we're actually going to enhance public safety by closing it. We also know from numerous studies that the more people who are incarcerated have time to spend with their families, the more likely they are to reintegrate in a much more healthy way, both into their neighborhoods and into their families. At Rikers, it's almost impossible to do that on any sort of regular basis. And the reason is it is so far away, it is so hard to get to. Even once you get to it, it is very hard to enter the facility. And even once you start entering the facility, there are times, not infrequent, not all the time, but there are times infrequent when you can't get to see your loved one because of something that happens within the facility. When a jail is neighborhood placed, you don't have those same hurdles. And that, we think, is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. We are also very strongly advocating that the new borough-based jails, as you've heard from Dana, be much, much smaller. And that's for two reasons. That will help us to enhance people who are the safety of those who are incarcerated. It will also help us to enhance the programming of those who are incarcerated. And it also will make it safer for correction officers. Why is that? The reason is that there are something called line of sights in jails, which means that a correction officer can see the greatest amount of space within the facility that he or she is in charge of maintaining. At Rikers, the line of sight is blocked in so many ways because it was built so long ago and it was built without any of the modern knowledge around the architecture of these sorts of facilities. We can now take advantage of the architecture to make sure that we make the facility absolutely as safe as possible. Again, both for those who are incarcerated and also for correction officers. And both are important because if you want to start to break the culture of violence that our good professor referred to, and I think that's absolutely right, I think you absolutely have to make it safe for both parties. It's really critically important. So we think that closing Rikers has multiple benefits. At some point, we can get into the finances around all this. We think the finances work in favor of the city. Current estimates are that we could achieve per annum, per yearly savings of $500 million. That's real money. $500 million year after year starts to mean more schools, more libraries, more parks, more rehabilitation programs, more ATIs, etc. Money that could be much better spent on improving the quality of life in our city rather than spending it on a facility like Rikers Island. The last point I want to make, or the next to last point I want to make, is this is a critically important process, but this is not the end of the process. This process, the questions about design, the questions about size, the questions about height, will continue to be reviewed over and over and over again until there is an absolutely final proposal. But it is critical that we go through this process successfully, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see so many people here, so many people concerned about this. It shows you how strong an issue this is, how important New Yorkers feel about this issue. And yes, Manhattan has really been at the forefront at helping to lead this charge, from Gale's task force to the support that the various community boards have given to this notion. And then I just want to close with one piece of data, and it's this. Many people will say to you, those that oppose this, that it is actually dangerous to do this. Here's just one quick data site that I want you to always keep in mind so that you can fire right back against that really misguided notion. The city of New York, and actually the state of New York, but the city of New York in particular, is in the middle of a huge experiment, and so far a very successful experiment around criminal justice reform. We are doing things that virtually no one else would dare do. But here are the top 3 headlines that you have to remember. We now incarcerate fewer people in our state prison system. There are fewer people coming out because there are fewer people going in. Dana told you about the sharp drop in the number of people being held at Rikers Island. We are arresting far fewer people than we've ever arrested in the past, and we're about to arrest even fewer. We have stopped stop and frisk, which was a major improvement in the way we carry out policing in this city. And with all of that going on, when you hear all that data, most people say, well, then my heavens, crime must just be soaring, and it is not. Crime is dropping and dropping and dropping. We are now at record low numbers around crime. So we have in our power to continue this experiment, continue improving lives, continue reducing the number of people who are in these facilities, and also making sure that when they do go in, that they do so in a safe way and in a way that gives them the sort of help that they need so that when they come out, they don't re-enter. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Charles, we call him Charlie Lai, Chung Pak Local Development Corporation, and a leader in Chinatown. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. My name's Charlie Lai. I'm the Executive Director of Chung Pak LDC. 37 years ago, the city needed to build a new jail to deal with the issues at Rikers Island. Over 12,000 Chinatown residents protested against its placement at 125 White Street, but the city built it over our objections anyway. The city made it clear to us that they did not need to engage or work with Chinatown because we do not vote. The city provided no transparency and very little information about the plans to the community. In spite of that, Chinatown still found ways to overcome those insults and work with the city. We became significant partners with the city in its efforts to address critical criminal justice needs. In essence, Chinatown accepted the city's burden for 37 years. However, the city did provide a 49-year lease to the community, but Chinatown had to raise all of the funds to build and develop the Chong Park complex. We have created an important community asset that now has businesses paying taxes to the city and serving as a jobs and economic hub for Chinatown. A health clinic and a daycare center that meets the needs of the community, and 88 senior citizens housing apartments for over 105 poor and low-income elderly. Here we are today in 2019. The city continues to disempower and frustrate our community, again without providing clear information, rationale, and plans to fully engage the community. I'm talking about not just select individuals in the community, quote, leadership, but the entire Chinatown community residents. The city plans to demolish that new jail and build an even larger jail in that exact spot next to our senior housing complex. 5 businesses will have to move elsewhere. The other 9 businesses will have to overcome 8 years of construction and disruption if they are to survive. Patients, parents, and pre-K children will have to brave the massive construction site to access services. And our community's most vulnerable senior residents will be confronted with unprecedented stresses that are simply beyond easy description or a quick fix. The majority of our residents are well in their 80s and 90s. Many are healthy, but a good number are becoming more frail and less mobile. With 6 of our residents over 100 years old, our building has the highest proportion of centenarians in the United States. It is our collective duty to reducing their stresses rather than increasing them. Because the planned jail is literally next door, we have grave concerns about its direct impact to Chong Park and our elderly. We are extraordinarily concerned that our seniors will suffer serious deterioration in their quality of health and quality of life. The enormous mental, physical stresses from the noise, vibrations, dust, air quality, pedestrian and car traffic, and shopping disruptions cannot be underestimated. Chong Park is a microcosm of Chinatown itself. Less than 100 feet away, beyond our building, the residents and businesses of the Baxter Street tenements, the streets and professional offices on Center Street, and the retail stores on Walker and Canal Streets will be confronted with the same issues and concerns. I say to the mayor and the entire city of New York that we support criminal justice reform, but we also demand justice and a fair shake and opportunities to participate in the decision-making processes. The city must work much harder to engage the entire Chinatown community. The city must work with our overburdened community to build the necessary trust and partnership to meet the city's challenges. Last November, the entire city spoke loud and clear by voting for and creating the Civic Engagement Commission to require the city to partner with communities and to support and encourage civic engagement efforts, to provide language access, and to make recommendations for projects in the communities through the participatory budgetary processes. The city does not have to wait until next year to engage the community. It needs to work with the community now. The state and city's hard work in reforming the criminal justice system has directly and significantly impacted the system. It is logical and fiscally prudent to analyze these great results before continuing to push for a plan that may not be as relevant in just a few years. The North Tower was at one time considered a good and safe jail, but it soon became similarly unsafe for detainees and corrections officers as Rikers. It is not difficult to imagine this huge proposed jail that is at least 3 times the height of our 13-story senior housing unit could easily become an albatross to Chinatown. We commend Community Boards 1 and 3 and the community organizations and residents for the strong voices in support of Chong Pak and our seniors. We also thank Councilmember Margaret Chen, Borough President Gale Brewer, for their steadfast support and advocacy for us and our elderly tenants. We are comforted by their unwavering stance on ensuring the safety and welfare of Chinatown's residents and businesses. There are a number of actions within the NAC recommendations and the 2 community boards resolutions that can be and must be implemented immediately to begin building the community's trust and to show the city's seriousness in their engagement with Chinatown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic, Carl. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm now going to start to call the speakers, and there are 2 microphones. I'm going to call Elizabeth Hovey. I'm doing it just by the list here. Davon Woodley, Patricia Tsai, and Vidal Guzman to start with. Come on up. And then I also want to thank our interpreter signers. Thank you very much for these 2 wonderful individuals. Go ahead, start. There's a microphone there and a microphone over there. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, President Brewer, for having this hearing. My name is Elizabeth Hovey, and I have lived a few blocks from this building for 28 years. And I'm here to say, welcome to my neighborhood, welcome to my backyard for this project. Because when I learned about the dehumanization that takes place at Rikers Island, I felt shame. I felt shame as someone who has been a citizen here and didn't understand that there are people, one who is now a minister, but when he was in Rikers, he said, I hurt because I knew the only way I could keep from being hurt was to hurt others worse than I could imagine. That definitely has to be brought an end to. And I think about my neighbor's concerns about having the tall building, and I must tell you that south of here, in the 2.5 blocks, just to get down to the other side of Fulton Street, we've had 9 enormous buildings put up in the last 5 years. So although I'm on White Street on a regular occasion, and I know that building looks very tall in its current version, I must say that 37 years without new building is a pretty long time. So I think that what's most important is overcoming the ravages of being so far removed from the court system and one's family. That's what Rikers has done. I think the most important thing is to move the jail to where inmates can have the good programming, can have the access to their attorneys, can have the easy transportation to the courts. And I'm a historian. I can tell you there have been jails in that vicinity since the 1840s. We can't say this is new. It's just what needs to be done at this time for true justice.
Thank you. Over there, go next. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Tsai, and I'm here to represent the Ling Sing Association, a 109-year-old association located on historic Ma Street in the heart of Chinatown. The association is comprised of 18 separate organizations, each of which has at least 80 years of history. As we have stated from the beginning, real prison reform involves reforming the culture of the criminal justice system and the people who manage prisons, not the concrete walls or land that house prisoners. Change of physical location is not the solution. Simply shuffling detainees around by replicating 4 Rikers in the city does no justice to the incarcerated because it creates a false appearance of improvements in their conditions while taking away resources away from urgent substantive reform. Real criminal justice reform begins with reforming case processing, sentencing, bail, changing the laws, and strengthening diversion and preventive mental health programs across the city, the successful implementation of which are expected to lead to speedy adjudications and reducing the number of inmates. Progressive A truly progressive criminal justice reform ends with less demand for prison beds, not more monuments or mass incarceration. It is immoral to stigmatize criticism, and demonize opposition by sugarcoating development projects of dubious public benefits as a moral imperative and public good, and demand disproportional sacrifices from minority communities for sham justice reform. It is immoral to undertake such mammoth construction projects without due diligence, such as properly assessing the risks of unsafe construction, soil condition, shifting foundations, sewage capacity, the dangers posed to surrounding buildings, and harm to local residents. As a proposal, city skyscraper jails are highly suspect in the manner in which the city rushed through scoping and environmental impact study and consolidated separate developments in 4 boroughs into one single ULURP process, which effectively deprives the public of critical scrutiny over the plan's actual effectiveness and potential harm, as well as exploration of physically more responsible alternatives.
Patricia, you need to wrap up.
We urge Borough President Brewer to hold the city accountable by demanding that the process be rolled back, specifically restart scoping and environmental impact study with full community engagement, as well as accurate site address, not 80 Center Street as a stand-in for 125 White Street.
Okay, thank
and abide
you.
by the democratic principle of one review process per construction.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Whoever's next, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Davon, aka Champ. Christ handles all my problems. I'm reading to you today as a person who is formerly incarcerated on Rikers Island. I suffered over 60 days while in the Ford building myself, and I just want everybody to know that Rikers Island is a human rights crisis. It is a case in human rights crisis. Actions need to be taken immediately to address the suffering by removing all the people with serious illness from the correction system entirely. And instead of in therapeutic settings not managed by the Department of Corrections, the city can plan for 1,100 less people in the jail system. The city can plan these facilities for less than 3,000 people across the entire system. The city must commit that the facilities will not be only designed differently, but operated differently, knowing that it's people going to be remanded. During my time incarcerated, I have encountered several mental health issues within the correctional administration and correctional officers themselves. I'm here stating for the record that I would like any and all people who have entered the system to receive the help that they need in order to return into society as a well-functioning member of their community, of this community, because this affects you too. People in this community board 1, 2, 3, throughout the 5 boroughs, are going to be greatly affected. Regardless if you're detained or convicted, you are still a member of this community and you deserve to have suitable housing and recommended facilities that is not going to just charge you and convict you based off the nature of your crime, but treat you as the human being you are through the due process that you deserve. That is what's most important here. That is what's more important here. Lastly, I'm Davon Woodley. I am not and never was
David, wrap up if you can.
I am a man, I am a son, I am a father, I am and will continue to be a valued member of this community.
Thank you very much.
So let me ask you something.
Hold on I just want to call the other people and then you can
Okay.
go ahead. So Jan Lee will be next, Zoe Hopkins will be next, Brian Holbrook will be next, and Irving Lee. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So let me ask you, son. I think President Gale Brewer asked a gray matter question. So whoever been on Rikers Island, incarcerated on Rikers Island, raise your hand. See, that's the difference, right? So my name is Vidal Guzman. And when they talk about criminal justice, they should ask us. I'm a community organizer with the Close Rikers Island campaign. I've been involved with the Close Rikers Island campaign for the last 3 years since the campaign first started. The leadership of directly impacted people had moved closing Rikers to idea to a goal within reach. As this has happened, there's a path we've seen in discussing about closing Rikers. One, people are talking about the size of the building instead of asking what programs is going to be there to support people. Also, people are saying we need to close Rikers and the city should just put people in borough-based facility that exists now, not thinking about conditions, not knowing that borough-based facility are not created to serve people's basic needs to return back to society. These existing borough-based facility doesn't have space for social service to operate, space for people to move around. As a person who's been in solitary confinement 2 years out of my time I was incarcerated, I remember the time that sunlight was important. As we know, people is gonna be remanded, conditions are important, and our organizing and momentum has not got us there yet to stop being remanded. As we pushing to build community investments in our platform and largely targeting the NYPD budget first, way to shift money, and later we must invest the money that's saved from closing Rikers and shrinking the jail population. And as the jail population is further shrinking, we pushing for empty space in the new facility to be used as other community purpose. Again, my name is Vidal Guzman. We cannot accept no more delay in closing Rikers. And I'm a person that actually was in the tombs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guzman.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. Thank you for these meetings, and thank you to Councilmember Chin for also hearing us. I'm going to say something that might be familiar to the Borough President.
Your name first, I'm sorry.
Jan Lee. Term limits for community board members don't make sense because veteran board members are neighborhoods' secret weapons in negotiations. And when it comes time to sit across the table from developers who have armies of lawyers, you have to have members who are well-versed in local issues and understand zoning.
I agree.
Those who know where the bodies are buried. Those were your words, Madam Borough President. In total, 5 community boards have listened to hundreds of testimonies from residents and experts and read hundreds of pages of data in the draft environmental impact statement. NUBC, which is a group that I belong to, has engaged with land planners, architects, engineers, builders, bankers, politicians, residents, business owners, and yes, with those who were incarcerated. We have consulted with them as well. After countless interviews and listening to community boards, we have asked the right questions. We have done our homework. And as a result of our hard work and that of our colleagues in the newly formed Boroughs United organization, we have informed our community boards. As a result, 4 out of 4 community boards have voted against the mayor's community jail plan. Community boards, that's right, and they represent us. Community boards are each comprised of 50 volunteer members, 50% appointed by the local borough president, and 50% from nominations by the city council members representing the community district. If many dozens of members of 4 community boards have voiced their opinions by way of a vote on both committee and full board level, and those people are appointed by the borough president and the council members, the borough president and the council member do not possess the right to oppose the community members that they have appointed to represent us. To do so is not progressive politics. To do so is fascist.
Wrap up. You need to wrap up.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to make one last comment. We are left here discussing this with a man who has checked out. The mayor is not with us. The people who have presented to us will not be with us. We have no reason to trust that the city's administration will be there with us when they break ground or when this jail is built.
Okay.
We are
Dan
on
Lee,
our own.
you
We
need-
have no reason to trust this
You need to
administration.
wrap up. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Holbrook, and I'm here as a supporter of the Close Rikers campaign to urge the borough president to vote yes with conditions on this plan. At my job, I represent parents with ACS cases in family court. Unfortunately, people of color and poor people in our city are targeted by child protective authorities just as they're targeted by the NYPD, and some of my clients are incarcerated at Rikers Island while also experiencing enforced separation from their children. I've seen time and again how the isolation of and long travel times to Rikers prevent parents and children from being able to see each other and maintain the bonds that are so critical, both for preserving family and to successfully transitioning from Rikers back to the community. Parents who would be entitled to at least 2 visits per week with their children if they were at liberty end up seeing their children once per month or less, all because family members and foster parents cannot spend hours on a bus every weekend bringing children to and from Rikers for visits. Moving to borough-based facilities would reduce travel times and make it much easier to bring kids to see their incarcerated parents. And regular contact with parents is one of the best ways to mitigate the trauma to children associated with both foster care and parental incarceration. In addition, my clients' family court cases are too often delayed when DOC fails to bring them from Rikers for their scheduled court dates. When an incarcerated parent's not brought to family court for an important court date, families and children are left in limbo, often for months between court dates. With borough-based facilities, incarcerated parents would be much closer to court, enabling them to come and participate in their cases and avoiding many unnecessary delays. For these reasons and for all the reasons given by members of the Close Rikers campaign, I'm urging you to vote yes with conditions on this plan, including the conditions that the planned capacity of the borough-based facilities be reduced to 3,000, that DOC not be allowed to run these borough-based facilities and bring that culture of violence to these facilities, and that the city make long overdue investments in poor communities of color to remedy the systemic injustices that produce both family separation and incarceration.
Thank you very much.
My name is Irving Lee. I just realized that the numbers keep on dwindling, maybe because people committing crimes won't be put in jail anymore, like felonies. Maybe that's the way to do it. But anyway, the proposal, my name is Irving Lee, by the way. I live in the community in Chinatown, a long time resident. The proposal to put a mega jail in Chinatown is fundamentally in itself racist. The fact that it's all the onus is being put on one community, which is absolutely wrong. The Lippman Commission report itself doesn't show that decentralization is going to resolve the fundamental issues. And I think given the impact of the construction that it would take place, the construction, the lack of sleep that's going to be created, the effect on businesses, the amount of parking that's going to be taken up. My understanding is going to be more parking that's going to be involved, and therefore more traffic. And it kind of undermines the whole idea of congestion pricing. That unfortunately, that the officers or those who will be working in the city will get exemptions. Despite the fact that it would undermine the whole idea of a green New York. So we're going to be facing construction nightmares, the effect in the community in terms of the construction, the traffic, the parking. All these variables are going to affect the businesses and the community. And I think that, along with the fact that the notion of decentralization is going to resolve the problem, isn't proven at all. And I think that we should reconsider and re-examine this whole process, the fact that it's been fundamentally undemocratic. Thank you.
Go ahead. I just want to call the other folks, King Dowling, Jen Yi, I'm sorry, Anna Pastoriza, and Jonathan Hollander. Those folks next. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Hi there, my name is Zoe Hopkins. I'm a member of No New Jails New York City, an abolitionist organization fighting to close Rikers without building new jails. To myself and to many of us here, $11 billion is an inconceivable amount of money. What is even more inconceivable to me is the proposal to spend it on the same process of surveillance, policing, and incarceration that have been brutalizing communities of color and poor people for far too long. It is also inconceivable to me that this proposal is thought of to be a paradigm for improved safety in this city. Safety is not brutality and violence and cages. Safety is community. Safety is putting this $11 billion towards education, affordable housing, and mental health programs. Programs that facilitate trust, care, and healing after centuries of systemic injustice that the carceral state has imposed disproportionately on communities of color. Safety is an end to broken windows policing, cash bail, and other practices that perpetuate violence against the people. Funneling money into jails is not going to uplift our communities or fix things in the city in any way. Jails and prisons do not keep us safe. Jails and prisons do not disappear social problems, they disappear people. Furthermore, if we bring these jails into communities, community members nearby will be subject to increased surveillance and police presence by virtue of their proximity to jails. Nobody likes to feel watched. Safety does not mean feeling watched. Somebody said tonight that when you take away someone's liberty, you need to treat them with respect. Respect without liberty is not real. This is why myself and other members of No New Jails are calling for the closing of Rikers without the building of new jails.
Ms. Hopkins,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's here, the officials, but especially the people, no matter what your point of view is. My name's King Downing. I'm a lawyer. I've been to Rikers, been there to visit people from my community in El Barrio. I've been there when I was a GED teacher and my students ended up there. I've been through the process. I've seen the bad conditions, the disrespect, and I've heard the stories from the people who are there. And I want to really give a round for the people who have been there, who have been testifying today, because they have been in short supply. Now, I want to say, for the record, I want you to know that I am an abolitionist. I believe that the prison system must be dismantled, and that includes Rikers Island. No double talk about that. My inspiration is Dr. Angela Davis, who's been fighting this for 40 years. Now, the abolitionists say close Rikers now. And what's the next step? We have three groups of people. We have the reformists. They want the change. Some of them are voting for this, but they don't see the systemic issues that are going to keep cropping up. So we've got to address the reformists. Then we have the NIMBYs who all say, oh, I'm all for criminal justice and I want to close Rikers Island, but not here, not where I am, not anywhere, and it doesn't matter what kind of plan you put forward, they're going to vote no. So we have to keep an eye on the NIMBYs. They're watching out for themselves. The final group, hey, when you get up there, I got a loud enough voice that I can shout you down. I want my time to be yielded. Hey, if you want to get into a personal thing, if you want to disrespect the speakers, I listen to you and I disagree with you. So I want the same respect from you. I want to hear that apology, and I don't want any more interruptions. Okay. Right, that's how it should have been. Okay, stop. Everybody stop. Go ahead. Hey, how it works, okay. All right, so I'm going to continue. The third group is the abolitionists. I told you where I am. I'm an abolitionist that steps up and takes the plan that's put before us and fights to make it what it should be. There's another set of abolitionists who state what they're against, but I haven't heard yet what they want to see. I'm inviting those abolitionists to sit down with me and tell me what your plan is, because if I like your plan, I'll step away from this one, but not until I hear what your plan is. All right, last but not least, no, I lost some of my time. You know I did. So I'm going to ask people to vote yes, add your conditions. If you don't get the conditions you want, I'll see you out there in the struggle. Dr. Angela Davis said, we remind ourselves that we are abolitionists so we don't settle for reform. She didn't say we don't fight for reform. She said we don't settle for it. So I'm fighting for reform, but I'm an abolitionist, and I want you to be the same way.
Thank you very much. Okay, shh. Next, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Pastoressa. I'm a member of Just Leadership USA and an activist on the Close Rikers campaign. I'm an immigrant from Italy to the Lower East Side, in Lower Manhattan. I've been living in District 1 for over 35 years. My people, just like many of the Chinese people in this area, are affected by, are worried about the community and the well-being of the community. But you have to understand that people from this community get incarcerated. My son was incarcerated on Rikers Island for 6 years as an innocent man waiting for trial. The trial never happened. He pleaded guilty to get out of Rikers Island, to avoid the violence, the culture of abuse that goes on there. During those 6 years, I was begging the DA, the attorney, everyone, the judge, to move my son to the Manhattan Detention Center so that I could visit him more often and be there to help him go through this madness, 6 years without trial. I continued to travel to Rikers Island for 6 years. He was never moved. He stayed there for 6 years. I smelled the sewage, the disgusting, infamous island, and all of what goes on there. I was submitted to violence myself. I witnessed violence, mainly, I have to say, by correction officers towards other people, to visitors, and to the detainees. That's why I support closing Rikers. I also support the borough jails, because I agree that they could be smaller and accommodate less people, but they must be near the courts. It is easier for family members and attorneys to visit incarcerated people. It is also very expensive to transport people from Rikers Island to the borough jails. So I believe that the mayor plans is good, should be improved before the city council votes on them.
You need to wrap up.
I also believe that not to recreate smaller Rikers Island jails, you should be removing
You need to
Department
wrap
of
up.
Corrections from the small facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Hollander. And first of all, I'd like to know if everybody in this room has seen what's planned to happen at 125 White Street. Because this model, the gray building, is what's planned, okay? Next, I want to ask some questions. I want to ask if there's anyone in this room that is against prison reform or is against the conditions in Rikers Island. Is there anyone here? I feel like this whole thing is bogus, that we're not addressing the right thing. Right now, we're posed with the issue of putting a building like this next to Columbus Park. I've been walking through my neighborhood. I live on White Street. I run a small nonprofit organization on White Street. First of all, it's shocking that so few people in our community actually know what is planned for them. Secondly, if you know Chinatown, you know that Columbus Park is the only place where senior citizens can do Tai Chi in the morning, where children can play games in the afternoon. The place is mobbed. There should be several of those, but in fact, there's only one. It's in the shadow of this building. For the next 10 years, the children who play in that park, the senior citizens who go out and have the only breath of air for them, they're going to be in the midst of a construction zone. So one question I have is why so much intelligence, and I've been listening to Dana, I know Gale, these are really, really intelligent people. The Lippman report, I'm sure, is full of very intelligent people. How such a ridiculous plan could emerge from all of this intelligence. This is a great city. I love New York City. I'm dedicated to New York City, and this is not what our city needs.
Jen is not here? Okay. Okay, Lonnie Lewis, Anthony Sperditi, Stephen Freed, and Edward Ma, Mr. Ma.
Hi, my name is Anthony Sperduti. I guess I want to echo what Jonathan just said. What I find ironic in this debate is that both sides agree. Rikers is a disaster, and the city does need criminal justice reform. But I oppose the mega jail on White Street because I have questions that the city has not been willing to answer. Why is building this dystopian monument to incarceration the only solution to closing Rikers? There has to be another solution. How does building the tallest jail in the country give us the progressive reform we probably all voted for with this administration? Why aren't locations not in family neighborhoods under consideration? How do the problems of Rikers not get repeated in this new jail if the only thing we are doing is changing buildings? This is not a case of us not wanting this in our backyard. We have a jail. We have a shelter on White Street. We are doing more than most any other neighborhood on behalf of the city, and we're happy to do it. Please help us keep Chinatown and East Tribeca intact as the vibrant family neighborhoods they are and not become the epicenter of the prison industrial complex. It's not the city we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ma.
Thank you, Borough President Brewer. And myself, my testimony here is against closing Rike Island. For reform, no. But it's not resolve the problems. Everybody thinks closing Rike Island resolves the problem. No. I think City Hall practice justice reform with many contradictions and inconsistency. First, establish Rike Island branch office of Manhattan District office could save a lot of money by not shipping prisoner to the current court office and instead of transporting the judge only with less expenses. It was about 40 years ago, one of my neighbor, assistant DA, was assigned to organize Harlem branch DA and office manager and appointed by Marcus DA. And I hope Rike Island not ending in becoming a rich man's island. Second, as a clinical psychotherapist, I consider remodeling Rike Island is the ideal therapeutic environment, safe, secure, tranquil, surrounded with waters, are able to facilitate cultivation of the growing self-awareness to rehabilitate mind and body. If moving to a high-rise building in Chinatown, there would be too many attraction, diversion, and the first thing in their mind every day is thinking about how to escape. Third, remodeling Rike Island is less than half of the cost. 11 billions. That 11 billions, that means 110 millions in building a new high building in Chinatown according to the City Hall evaluation. Over the years,
Mr. Ma, you need to wrap up.
Would be decreased. It is wondering if prisoner decreased, why you build a 45-story?
All right.
It's very foolish to do this.
Mr. Ma, you need to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Thank you, everybody. My name is Lonnie Lewis, and I'm gonna give you two reasons that Rikers Island should be closed. Laylene Blanco and Khalif Browder. Those are two reasons why Rikers Island needs to be closed, okay? So I hear everybody, what everyone is saying, and humbly, I understand. But until your family is affected by what's going on Rikers Island, directly affected by what's going on Rikers Island, again, I humbly respect your opinion, but Rikers Island needs to be closed, and we do need to open these borough-based facilities. So I, like my brother King, am an abolitionist, right? I do think that all prisons need to go away. However, we need to start somewhere. We need to start somewhere, all right? So these smaller, safer, fairer, borough-based facilities that the city is presenting to us, I think that we need to at least step back and maybe reassess the plan, go over it a couple times, but it does need to happen. Rikers Island needs to close, point blank, period. As long as people are dying and being treated the way that they're being treated on Rikers Island. I have a comrade that was in Rikers Island, and he told me a story about how there were rats inside of his cell every single night, and he had to do these different things to get these rats out of his cell, okay? So as long as that's happening on Rikers Island needs to be closed. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. After the next speaker, it's Najim Ugoga, Richard Chin, Donna Hulton, and Curtis Bell.
Hi, my name is Stephen Freed. I'm an architect, and I live 1 block away in Chatham Towers from this proposed project. And I want to speak specifically about the project because it may be not completely clear of just how big it is. What's in the DEIS is calling for a nearly 1.3 million square foot mega jail, which is almost 500,000 square feet over the zoning ordinance. And what I want to particularly highlight is the process going forward, because it seems to me that the mayor's office is on a path that assumes that city planning will vote in favor of this and rubber stamp this plan. And when you look at the design, it's clear that this is really an accounting exercise to say how many prisoners are there, give them square footage of program, and here you go, here's a building. Again, it doesn't fit on the site. There are alternatives. Break it up, make it smaller. These things need to be considered. And now I will add, this wasn't in my remarks, but the idea that Chinatown doesn't want a jail, and this is a NIMBY issue, is outrageous. We know we have jails there. We've always had jails there. We didn't wake up one day and said, come on, build a mega jail. It's unnecessary. The South Tower can be renovated. That was a very strong proposal at the community board meeting. Do not tear that down. It is eligible as an historic building. And the North Tower, okay, take it down, build something sensible. Why close White Street? We don't want to walk in tunnels to walk around the city. And in terms of cars, we know corrections took over that street and parked their cars there. That was supposed to be a pedestrian plaza in the original design. So these guys are bad neighbors.
Thank you very, very much.
My name is Naja Eisenberg-Gio, and I'm an organizer with No New Jails. Rikers must be shut down immediately and permanently. I also oppose the city's plan to construct 4 new jails. People currently incarcerated in New York City jails are our neighbors, community members, families, friends, and loved ones. Like a young person caged by the DOC who died on June 9th in the Bellevue prison ward, and the young woman Layleen Polanco Extravaganza, a 27-year-old Afro-Latina trans woman who was caged on Rikers, tortured by solitary confinement, and found dead in a cage on Friday, June 7th. Layleen Extravaganza's criminalization, incarceration, and brutalization are the expected, routine, intimate, and structural violence of policing, jails, and prisons, which are the central institutions of white supremacist heteropatriarchy, of a system that doesn't give a fuck about Black trans lives, that capitalizes on the murder of our siblings to put forward mealy-mouthed reforms that don't actually change a damn thing, that don't actually keep Black trans women alive and safe. Our trans siblings behind bars have been telling us for years that safety for incarcerated people is impossible. I am guided by their abolitionist vision and analysis in calling for the closure of Rikers without building new jails. And I want to share words from 2 currently incarcerated people who have written to us to tell us about their experiences. Miss K, who's a white transgender woman currently housed in the THU, the Transgender Housing Unit on Rikers, wrote to us and said, accountability in the penitentiary is nil. It is impossible to make jails and prisons safe for transgender people. The administration is not interested in the safety of any LGBT people. Protecting us is the last thing on their mind. R&B, who's a transgender, gender nonconforming Black person in an upstate prison, wrote to us, as a whole, I've endured physical and sexual abuse, and to this very day, I am targeted by the guards for being who I am. I do my best to keep my head above water, but there are days when I wish the water would eventually swallow me.
Okay.
But I manage to the best of my ability. I've tried to commit suicide multiple times, but God wants me to keep fighting. That's why I'm still alive. No, I want to keep talking.
Well, you have to wrap up because we got 50 people, and everybody needs.
How many more Black and brown transgender people have to die before you do the right thing and let our people free?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Brewer. Chinatown, Manhattan. I want to just clarify something.
Your name, sir.
I just want to clarify something. It's not just the Borough-Based communities, or Curtis Bell, the Borough-Based communities, it's not just about Manhattan. these borough-based facilities are in borough-based communities. And we sit here and we think about, all right, it's just Manhattan, like it's going to bear the onus of responsibility. A moral imperative is a collective imperative. It's not just one borough. We're not just talking about Manhattan and parking spots. We're talking about lives. That's what we're really talking about. And that's what we really need to consider. We can sit back all day and be like, all right, these political issues, government can do two things at once. Your gripes and grievances can be addressed, but so can a current environmental crisis. You're speaking to a man who spent 18 years in prison, so I'm not speaking from lack of experience. I'm speaking because it matters. I could be anywhere right now. But there are people I know that I was incarcerated with when I was 15 and 16 that may come home with asbestos, come home with ailments, like some correctional officers right now retiring with ailments caught on by their jobs. So when the mayor's office is saying, let's shut this down, all right, let's shut it down. But don't say no to a humanitarian crisis. So when we talk about Chinatown, I have a lot of Chinese and Asian friends in prison suffering as well. Make this common connection. Not black and brown bodies go to jail. Not just people from Bedford-Stuyvesant or the lower slums of Manhattan.
Mr. Bell, you need to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But please consider the moral compass. Not funding, not developers. I am a life. Consider me.
Thank you very much.
Richard Chen. I've been a high school teacher for 33 and a half years, and I've seen my share of city visions, big visions. I'm a little bit cynical. But environmental catastrophe, last speaker was talking about. Let me zero in on that, not the moral imperative, which we all agree on. Let me take you on a virtual tour of this building. On the north side is Canal Street. Now, anybody driving on Canal Street wants to move to New Jersey. That's pretty bad. On the east side, you have a single lane Baxter. One lane, okay? On the west side, you have Center Street. That's the traffic coming off the bridge, going to Canal Street to go to the Holland Tunnel or the Manhattan Bridge. Now, you build this 44-story or 40-story building, no matter what it is, even if it was Amazon there, the inconvenience, the environmental disaster, the infrastructure around there is not in place for this building. Chinatown, subway station, Canal Street station, the platform is already overcrowded and dangerous. The streets, well, talk about inconvenience. Every single parking space I've seen available over there is taken over by someone with a placard. So now you're talking about 44 stories. You're talking about 2 or 3 times the number of staff. You're talking about hundreds of families coming into the area. You know, I think I got a better plan. I do, if I have a little bit more time. We should change the Manhattan Correctional, the Tombs, as it's known, into a transitional facility for people whose trials are upcoming.
Sir, you need to wrap up if you can, please.
Rikers should be preserved.
Thank you very much.
Renovated.
Quiet. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, President Brewer. My name is Donna Hilton. I am the director of a Women and Girls Project at Catal Center. I happen to be an abolitionist. I happen to be a human being. I happen to be a mother, a child, a sister, a friend, and a neighbor. I also happen to be formerly incarcerated, serving 27 years. Right now, as a director of a program, I am trying to assist women who are re-entering society, who have children and family. And surprisingly, some of those women are Asian. They come from this very area, Chinatown. There are some in the community right now who are afraid to be in this room right now because they feel like they would be targeted and shunned and shamed by their very people in their community because they're Chinese. And they live in the buildings with you. And I know this. I'm saying it because I keep hearing all these conversations about, well, not here because of the height. I am a person who's fighting the legislation to decarcerate as we plan to close Rikers Island. I've been a part of this plan, conceiving this plan before it even came into fruition. And so I continue to fight. I am not an abolitionist who says close something down and I don't have a plan. I am working on a plan daily. I'm working on a plan every single moment that I breathe. I am planning on something. I plan to work with you so you don't have to see a 400-foot building or whatever height it may be. I agree with you because I understand your unspoken words about not in my backyard, and also because the culture of my environment, I understand it. I am not being an adversary. I'm saying I agree with you and I'm willing to fight with you. But I'm saying to you to understand that the people that we're talking about deserve an opportunity to live as a human being as you do. I am a tax-paying citizen, and so are they when they come out. And they plan to be tax-paying citizens within this community as well. And I'm saying give us a chance. Give them a chance. Don't downplay it and say it is not important because of the height and the parking. We are human beings.
Okay,
There's a lot more.
You need
than
to
a
wrap
parking
up.
spot.
Thank you very much. Joseph Mirabella, Agira Stanley, Shane Yamani, and Ryan Aquilata. So yes, go ahead, sir.
Ms. Brewer, thank you for this opportunity. I'm a 47-year veteran.
Your name?
Joseph Mirabella. I'm a 47-year resident of Chinatown. I had a speech prepared, but I just don't understand one thing. We've been at this for 6 months, and what has the correction department done to help the people who are incarcerated now? Nothing. They know what the problems are. They're listening to you people. What have they done? Have they helped you guys? Have they done anything for you? So, I mean, why do you have to attack people from Chinatown with this NIMBY bullshit? It's not true.
Hold on, sir.
Already in Chinatown.
Sir, say your space. Go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Brewer, I'm hoping that in the future you will become our mayor. And I want you to know that building.
I like Manhattan.
Please don't sig Mr. Stringer on us, please. But I want you to know one thing. If these prisons are built, and contrary to what the communities feel, it's going to be very difficult to elect anybody. So I just want you to know that Mr. Whitman, the poet, said, of all sad things of tongue and pen, the saddest of these what might have been. So I would appreciate if the Correction Department does something immediately to help those people who are currently, and also I want you to also remember, we're not against prisons. We have 3 of them. We want you to restore and fix the ones you have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Over there, quiet, please. Let's listen. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Ryan Aquata. I'm a resident of Manhattan, and my religious community, the Village Zendo, is located in the district where this jail is being proposed to be built. I'm here today because even though my childhood best friend's father was in prison our whole life, my privilege still allowed me to believe that the carceral system was something far away from me and my family. Many years later, with a cousin currently in prison, another no longer with us because he took his own life on the day before he expected to go to jail, with a close family friend having continuing difficulty finding work and housing after spending time inside, and with many new friends from the movement sharing their own experiences with me, I've come to the conclusion that jails and prisons do not right wrongs, do not heal harm, and do not make anyone safe. They are destructive, violent institutions that need to be abolished. This has made this ULEP process tremendously frustrating to navigate as we discuss building jails and closing jails, improving conditions inside, and resourcing our communities. Yet whenever I felt lost, I keep coming back to the simple idea that when we are talking about jails and prisons, about their construction or closure, that we need to be listening to and following the lead of the people who've been inside of them. The people who've been detained on Rikers, who've been in multiple jails and prisons and can share from their firsthand experience that they are all terrible and that some are exceptionally terrible and should be targeted for closure first. If the words close Rikers come out of my mouth, it is because people who've been on Rikers, many of them sitting in this room right now, put them there. And so I demand that you vote yes on this plan with conditions, and that those conditions be exactly those outlined by the formerly incarcerated members and leaders of the Close Rikers campaign, who have painstakingly mapped out the steps to decarcerate our jails and resource our communities for you. Don't pick and choose the bits of their plan that you like and ignore the rest. Don't make another half-assed plan and dress it up with their language. Read Just Leadership's plan to close Rikers and build communities and adopt it fully as the conditions to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quiet. Go ahead. Quiet, quiet. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Akira, and I'm with the Alliance of Families for Justice. I'm a formerly incarcerated woman. I was in my first month of pregnancy when arrested and could not afford bail. I endured my pregnancy and had my son in state prison. Rikers Island needs to close as it is dilapidated, old, rat vermin-infested infrastructure with a culture of torture and fosters inhumane, degrading, and psychologically destructive, violent, life-destroying experiences for anyone who survives the experience. Change must start somewhere, and although I am not a supporter of putting anyone in a cage for any length of time, the city's current plan seeks to address many issues that the current system fails to even think twice of. According to an independent study just last week, local jails have no impact on property value or crime rates in a neighborhood. Officials and people should support the plan because there has been no other time in history of the city that any administration has been willing to come to the table and engage multiple organizations from a range of services, mental health, formerly incarcerated people, advocacy groups, social justice groups, therapeutic health services, in addition to the corrections and policing organizations. Women's specific needs, health, and safety are specifically being focused on with an emphasis on family, pregnancy, children, and visitation for a centralized women's facility. With formerly incarcerated women working on the plan, development, and input, sexual violence against women as well as the other mentioned needs will be in the forefront. If the plan does not move forward, the ULEP process fails, it means Rikers Island stays as is and people continue to die, suffer, and be tortured every day with abusive guards and all-around unsafe conditions for everyone involved. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We need to make the step towards better choices and a better system. Nothing is perfect. However, we have the power to make the changes that we know must happen. As a formerly incarcerated person and a voice of those who cannot speak right now behind the walls, this plan must move forward and we must continue to strive for change. Change can always happen. We can continue to revise the plan. We can address the issues of the community.
You need to wrap
we must
up.
work together.
Thank you very much. Before the next speaker, I want to call up Angelo Bonilla, Stephen Schlackman, Diana Switjob, and Lauren G.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Shane Yamane. I'm a member of the Chinatown Core Block Association and a resident living within 500 feet of the current Manhattan Detention Center. I want to remind Madam Borough President, our Block Association reached out to your office on February 28th regarding our FOIL request initiated October 2018. To recap, 8 months ago, our association submitted 2 FOIL requests that have, to this day, remained unanswered. At the initial NAC meeting, you responded to our chair that you are confident that you would be able to locate the EIS and ULERP documents for the original MDC. In the first FOIL request, we asked for reports relating to the uniform land use review process for the current Manhattan Detention Center at 125 White Street. In the second FOIL request, we asked for documents relating to the environmental impact statement for the current Manhattan Detention Center at 125 White Street. Both FOIL requests have yet to be answered. It is important that the community have access to these documents to fully understand the scope of the city's decision-making process when planning and constructing the north and south towers of MDC back in 1980. With the massive world's tallest jail planned for this location, I would assume that these documents would be heavily referenced by the Department of Corrections, the Department of City Planning, and the Department of Design and Construction. I'm confused as to why these reports are not readily available to the community to review and revise. As we learned from Dana Kaplan and Danielle in the Neighborhood Advisory Committee meetings, all ULURP and EIS reports are public information. The excuse that, quote, "it was a long time ago," is suspect because no project of this scale would be initiated without extensive scrutiny of the original environmental impact statement and ULURP documents. Therefore, the Chinatown Core Block Association demands that the borough president make good on her offer to locate these critical documents that will provide historical, physical, cultural, and economic context to this once-in-a-generation project to build the world's tallest jail. Without this information, you cannot possibly vote to approve the mayor's community jail.
Thank you very much. I will follow up, and I apologize. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir, and then we'll go over there. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Schlackman. I'm with AFJ, Alliance Family for Justice, and I'm a fellow for closing Rikers Island. I was incarcerated May 11th, 2011 to May 11th, 2013 at 1111 Hazen Street, Mod 2 Lower. I awaited trial for 24 months, violating my constitutional rights in violation of my Sixth Amendment. I think Rikers Island should be closed because of the inhumane conditions that I witnessed. Rats running across my radiator in my cell continuously to the point where I had to keep the lights on 24 hours a day. I was terrified. During the visits, people visited me in Rikers Island, my mom, and it took her about 4 hours to get in and 4 hours to get out. And if there was any problems on Rikers Island, the jail would be closed down and we wouldn't have a visit. I think Rikers Island should be closed and the facility-based jails would be better because it would engage inmates in school, vocation programs, library, recreation, and have a closer knit to the family to not break that family ties. People should support this because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This has never been presented in New York City ever. This plan the plan should sometimes, people should vote for this because its justice doesn't stand for all ethnicities. If this plan fails, we as a society in New York City will take a step backwards into the ice age as technology moves forward. United we stand, divided we fall. One opportunity presents itself, the closing of Rikers Island, once and for all. Inhumane conditions, and it's not a rehabilitation, it's an inhabilitation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Angelo Bonilla. I'm a representative of a 5% Nation. I work out of an office called National Office for Cultural Affairs. I did about 8 years in prison. I'm also going back within New York State docks to meet with them to give a presentation to the correctional officers on what the 5% Nation is, where headquarters is up in Harlem. I've been arrested as a youth in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, in Queens, and they all send you to the same areas in Rikers Island. And what I've been through in Rikers Island is terrible. I've been in prisons upstate where they take us in groups out to the town to do work for the communities, and the people in the communities have brought us baked cookies. Baked cookies is something when you're, eating frozen foods for so long. But what I'm saying is, this is not an issue of real estate, because I'm studying real estate, and the world's tallest Holiday Inn I work at as a fire safety director on Rector Street, 50 stories. In front of the law school in Mecca on 127, I can see a building damn near as big as the Freedom Tower. And let me tell you something, these publishers that I'm reading in real estate, air rights is the new wave. There's so many people moving into New York that it's becoming overcrowded, so they're building higher. And it's been happening all over the city. People are leaving. I live in the Bronx because I can't afford to live in District 3 where I grew up at all my life. Now, what I witnessed in Rikers Island is a steroid for criminal mentality. I have good friends that went into jail and came home gang members, and I felt like I didn't even know them anymore. On Rikers Island, I suffered from depression, anxiety, fear, and you know what that does when that accumulates in one? Let me tell you something. It's about building communities. We're talking about human evolution. We're talking about evolving in civilization as a people. So yes, we need jails in our own boroughs so we can have more social workers going in there and programs going in there because they're not on Rikers Island.
Mr. Bay, you need to wrap up. Thank you
Peace.
very much. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Lauren G., and I'm very glad to hear that the speakers are not tiptoeing around the issue that the 5,000 plus incarcerated and the corrections officers at Rikers are predominantly people of color. However, with $11 billion and 10% of the city's budget at stake, why wouldn't the current administration want to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people of color? One, why has the mayor tried to pass off NYCHA housing to the federal government? According to the Queens DA's office, $11 billion could refurbish every single NYCHA apartment for working class, tax-paying people of color. Two, why has the mayor pitted Black and Hispanics against Asians over the specialized high school admissions tests? With a majority of public school students being people of color, only a portion of $11 billion could provide enrichment and honors programs for every single high school. Three, why do we have so few athletic, arts, job training, and employment opportunities in neighborhoods of color? These programs could prevent at-risk youth from ever entering the criminal justice system. Instead, the mayor intends to give us monstrous high-rise prisons. He wouldn't even dare hint at this for liberal white Park Slope or Greenwich Village. No, the main issue is green, the color of money. Rikers Island is no sacred site. See how fast a new runway for LaGuardia will be built. Rikers closing and the new jail construction will be a financial bonanza for real estate developers, construction firms, professional consultants, and the re-election coffers of politicians. And guess what color most of these folks are? Racial hypocrisy and political lies have permeated every aspect of this borough-based jails debate and will be the legacy of the de Blasio administration.
Thank you. Jeannie Chin, Howard Hugh, Maureen Silverman, and Kay Williams. Diana from Board 1, I think she might have left. I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Chinatown's location between three jails was the perfect storm after 9/11.
Put your name, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jeannie Chin.
Thank you, Jeannie.
We were put under extreme street lockdown and overrun with every type of barricade, clanging streets, steel plates, security booths, security gates, security checkpoints, security cameras were everywhere on every block in Chinatown. Our streets and sidewalks, even our park, were turned into gigantic parking lots. Park Road, our main street, they drew lines on it so the police would have private street parking. They even had double parked permit cars on narrow Mulberry Street sidewalks while families were forced to walk single file in our neighborhood for months. Cars were parked in front of bus stops as MTA and tour buses were rerouted out of the neighborhood. Streets and sidewalks were impassable with zero traffic enforcement. Within months of these extreme security measures, dozens of Chinatown businesses closed. Small businesses with already high rents and low profit margins were hammered. We heard emergency vehicles wail at Chatham Square in traffic congestion. Nearby Confucius Plaza residents testified at hearings that their relatives dying of strokes could hear the ambulances, but they couldn't get to them for half an hour or more. So when the Downtown Express clocked ambulances traveling half an hour instead of 10 minutes to the hospital, we were told this was because of security. But security for who? We later learned the lockdowns were because of one of the jails and not because of one police plaza. The police commissioner called Chinatown collateral damage.
You need to
the euphemism for too bad.
wrap up if you can. Thank you.
one last paragraph. We had to fight block by block to reclaim our streets for over 14 years. And even today, many streets are permanently closed to traffic. So how fair is it to put the tallest jail in the world here when we already have 3?
Hi, my name is Howard Huey, and I'm here to speak against the certification of the Borough-Based jail plan to build 4 massive jails that will tower over the communities that they will be built in. Madam Borough President, what the city is proposing to build in our communities is monuments to incarceration. We don't want your monuments. We don't need your monuments. What we need is true community engagement. What we need is to restart this process because the scoping process was flawed. What we want you to understand is that these monuments not only do not belong in our neighborhoods, but do not belong in any neighborhood that is comprised of residential and small businesses. We need you to know that a 40 to 50-story jail is an abomination of the Lippman Commission plan, which calls for smaller jails throughout the city. The projected cost of these monuments is nearly $11 billion. We don't want to waste our hard-earned taxpayers' dollars on overly expensive, overpriced, untested vertical jail systems. We don't need to have the world's tallest jail in our community. What we want is more investment in our communities, on our schools, on the quality of our education. What we need is more affordable housing, more senior citizen housing, better parks, and community programs for our youths.
That's right, not in your backyard.
What we want is transformational criminal reform. What we need is to break the cycle of incarceration. What we want, Madam Borough President, is for you to join with the other borough presidents against this plan. What we need from you, Ms. Brewer, is to say, no, not in my borough, not in my community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before I call on the other speaker, on the next 4 will be Jamie Malaska, Anastasia Tompkin, Edward Whittick, and Kelly Grace Price. Thank you.
My name is Maureen Silverman. I have lived in the district of the Manhattan Detention Complex for over 25 years. I am part of a couple of prison abolitionist groups, one of which is Survived and Punished. I stand on the shoulders of the people I learn from when I visit women in Bedford Hills, who many of them were formerly in Rikers. I stand on the shoulders of my mentors who were pioneers in the prison abolition movement and who support no new jails, like my mentor, Mariam Kaba, people like Andrea Ritchie, Critical Resistance, and many others. I'm here to say we need to close Rikers now, immediately and permanently, without building new jails. The Borough-Based jail plan is a propaganda PR campaign. It's a travesty of justice. The city describes the plan as culture change. What it really is a rebranding and legitimizing and normalizing of the status quo and a reproduction, a continuation and expansion of the destructive carceral state. It's not about not in my backyard, and it's not about trapping, it's not about just Chinatown, it's about nobody's backyard. Nobody's backyard. No new jails in Manhattan, no new jails in Kew Gardens, no new jails in Mott Haven, no new jails in Brooklyn, because we need to think of a transformative society where there's where people realize that safety comes through community resources that allow people to survive and thrive, and not by dehumanizing them in cages.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how whenever and in this country,
You need to wrap up.
comes up with a reform,
Okay.
the city has history
of building
Thank-
new jails as a reform
Ms. Tillman,
and
thank you.
branding them in the same way.
Thank you very much.
When the tombs were built, when the tombs were rebuilt, they were branded as state-of-the-art architecture.
Thank you.
A new humane reform.
Ma'am, you need to thank you very, very much. Okay, over there, go ahead.
Good evening, Borough President and everybody else on the board. My name is Keith Francis Williams. I am one of the founding members of the Black Lives Matter Global Network. I am also an organizer and a leader of the No New Jails campaign here in New York. This is a complicated conversation, as we know, because the city and the mayor has limited us to a EULA process. So unfortunately, when it comes to lives, and it comes to human beings, and it comes to communities, instead we're faced with talking about how tall can a jail be? Do we have rights to airspace? Can we rezone? We're talking about land use because that is what the city has contained and confined us to. That is what has happened. And so when we're sitting here arguing with each other, and we're not sitting here talking to MOCJ or DOC, and we've been given the same exact rendering for the past 6 months. We don't even know what we're voting on. I've been to every single meeting, and people don't even know what they're voting on, because that's how convoluted this plan is. It's a scam. It's a scam. There's not even a conversation about closing Rikers until 2026. So I understand when folks say it's not a jail expansion plan, but agree that for the next 10 years, all the city is committed to is building new jails. That's the only thing about this plan that is guaranteed. Nothing else is worked out. And I'm emotional tonight because I ask you guys, and I love y'all. Y'all know I ride with y'all so hard, Riddell and y'all. You know I love y'all so much. But how many more Khalif Browders? How many more Layleens are we gonna lose to trying to reform an oppressive system? How many more of us are we gonna lose to put in safer, smaller conditions? This is not an all of a sudden reflective plan, and I'll wrap up. It's not something that's new. Blackwell's Island was the exact same package deal. Close Rikers now. Please don't build any more jails because I cannot lose another Layleen. I cannot do that. I cannot allow you to spend $11 billion to kill another one of my people. I really can't.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Maleshka. I proudly work at the Fortune Society, and I teach a writing workshop on Rikers Island. And I want to draw into the space those brilliant minds that I have the gift of being able to work with. New York City holds legal system reform up as a progressive priority, while allowing an 84-year-old jail complex with a documented, deep-seated culture of violence to continue operating. There cannot be further discussions about meaningful criminal justice reform in New York City until we close Rikers Island. At Fortune Society, we have been fighting for criminal justice reform alongside our allies for over 50 years. And we will continue to stand united with our allies in this fight to close Rikers until we see every last cell destroyed. This movement is much larger than any one person. It's larger than former Speaker Mark Viverito, larger than Judge Littman. It's bigger than Mayor de Blasio. This movement is well over 50 years strong and has outlasted many administrations and political climates. And rest assured, we'll persevere to continue fighting for the rights of people impacted by the legal system for decades to come. Fortune Society has always recognized the value and importance of prioritizing the experiences of people directly impacted as they personally understand the harsh realities of the legal system. To not support a plan informed and led directly by leaders with lived experience as part of a profound, decade-long movement would be counterintuitive to the values of our mission. The Borough-Based Jail Initiative is the only practical approach that will allow New York City to see Rikers close within the next decade. Rikers Island intentionally exacerbates feelings of isolation and barriers to human contact. That's its point, to disconnect and to destroy. Being far removed from the community reinforces harmful stigmas and stereotypes. I support this plan with conditions because it was created with input from people who have personally experienced the horrors of Rikers, and their voices were and continue to be paramount.
You need to wrap up.
I will. They know that closing Rikers is urgent and cannot be delayed, and I hope that you do too.
My name is Edward Whitlock. I'm a community organizing student at Silverman School of Social Work here in Manhattan. I'm working with the Children of Promise, CPNYC, and I'm here tonight in support of Just Leadership's Build Communities platform. CPNYC is a community-based, and I'm also here to add the perspective specifically of people who are working with children directly impacted by incarceration. CPNYC is a community-based organization in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, with a mission to embrace children of incarcerated parents and empower them to break the cycle of intergenerational involvement in the criminal justice system. CPNYC recognizes the distinct needs of this population and offers a broad array of support services and a safe space where young people can share similar experiences, mentally, emotionally, and socially supportive environment. CPNYC's unique integrated service model holistically serves each child and assists them in processing the shame and stigma associated with parental incarceration. We currently serve 350 children and 100 caregivers in our after-school programming, mentoring, Saturday resource centers, tutoring services, and family engagement service. Additionally, CPNYC is the first and only licensed Article 31 behavioral mental health clinic in the U.S. specifically designed to meet the comprehensive needs of families impacted by incarceration. We want to completely eliminate sentences of 1 year or less and include therapeutic options for people with addictions. CPNYC currently serves about 200 children who have incarcerated parents or caregivers. All of the children serviced by this agency are either Black or Latino. Some children are experiencing the dilemma of having both parents incarcerated. CPNYC provides a safe space for these young New Yorkers and delivers who are the future of New York while providing them and their families with mental health therapy by licensed clinicians. Our community-based organization is eager to include incarcerated parents and caregivers in these therapeutic sessions.
Sir, you need to wrap up.
Services could be an important component of alternative to incarceration's essential options for people with addictions. We want a separate facility for women. Okay,
Thank you very much. So you need to wrap up. No, but
CPNYC has children aged 6 to 18 who face extreme stigma in the schools and the community.
Rosie, I'll get it.
A separate
It's okay.
facility for women in the community that the children could visit their parents more often would greatly benefit our community.
Thank you very much, sir. The next group after you, ma'am, will be Trent Taylor, Kendra Clark, Francis Ma, and Jeanette Young. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Anastasia, and I noticed we're starting to talk about the concept of what's racist. And I'd just like to remind everyone that the people who were legally enslaved by the United States of America were the African American people. And I bring that up to say that slavery was legalized, and right after slavery, they manipulated the laws to then make sure that the African Americans stayed down. And all of the strides that have been made in the civil rights movement in this country have been because of the African American people in this country. And so the ones who are currently incarcerated and suffering on Rikers Island are predominantly Black and brown people. And that is a legacy of the evil past of this country. And if certain people are claiming that they care about prison reform and they have researched and they know, but they just don't want the jail being built too large in their community, then I challenge you to say, well, what are the options that you are presenting? Why don't you partner with the groups of people who have been formerly incarcerated and know what they're talking about and say, hey, what can we come together and do to make sure that there is effective prison reform? Not just, I don't want this building here because it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, it isn't aesthetic, all of these things. They pale in comparison to the fact that people are dying, being raped, being tortured, and being turned into complete criminals when they weren't even criminals. They were largely innocent on Rikers Island. So do you care about your peace and your serenity and your beautiful community that, mind you, there is no Africa Town in this country and there never was, okay? And that is because there has been rampant racism against Black and brown people in this country. And until we prioritize eliminating that, there is no talk about, oh, the building is too high. Okay, so please, if you truly care, partner with them and mediate and hear their concerns.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, good evening, Miss Gale. My name is Francis Ma. 我要用中文来说。我分别住过纽约的上城、中城、下城，其中对唐人街有着血脉相连、浓郁深厚的感情。回溯上世纪初 ，Dr. 申央胜、孙中山先生生前4次到访纽约演讲、筹款，在纽约成立兴中会、同盟会，主要在雾街、白野街活动。雾街7到9号是兴中会成立的大楼。换句话说，纽约唐人街是孙中山先生推翻满清、建立民国、从事革命工作的摇篮。对所有身处美国的华人而言，是永不可磨灭的一页。不仅深具历史价值和意义，并且肩负着承先启后的教材。2019年2月5日，纽约市长白思豪出席中华公所新年庆祝活动时，宣布是否同意将孙中山铜像永久安置于哥伦布公园内，不仅代表纽约市向孙中山先生致敬，同时也向纽约市广大华裔移民致敬。陈倩文也表示，此举代表着美国华人的历史受到尊重。孙中山促进中国历史转型，是改革先驱者。中华公所主席吴瑞贤也提到，1911年3月，孙中山曾在中华公所演讲，支持革命，在历史上深具继往开来的神圣使命。孙中山的铜像永久安置在哥伦布公园，更具有实质意义，鼓舞人心。当我知道市政府准备在 White Street 新建一栋50层楼高的巨无霸监狱的时候，犹如晴天霹雳。试问，有哪一位国家的国父铜像与监狱囚犯比邻而居？如果孙中山在九泉有知，必定哭断肝肠。此举无疑是羞辱中国人的国父孙中山先生。我不希望，也不愿意看到有华裔移民日后会雕刻他们的白思豪的像，长跪在孙中山铜像前，就像当年秦桧跪在约翰墓前，青山有幸埋忠骨，百年无辜铸令臣。
Thank you very much.
三思而行。Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ngoy. My name is Kelly Grace Price.
Go ahead. Yep. If you want to translate, go ahead.
So basically, her point is like, so a long time ago, there's like a revolution, a guy called Zhong Sanchun. So he come to America and to just build up like a democracy. And the key point is like she really against for like building the prison and then make it bigger. And she feel really upset of like on behalf of like Zhong Sanchun, and also very upset about like the whole Chinese community to like build up like the prison to bigger and then taller. So this is like basically her point of view. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Ngoy.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do? No, listen, I'm going to get it translated in the office. Shh. Hold on one second. We're going to get it translated in the office, and we will circulate it because this is all on tape, and we have many people who speak languages, so we will make sure it gets translated because I want to hear the whole thing. Thank you.
Go ahead, stop. Stop right now. Go ahead. So, hi, my name is Kelly Grace Price, one of the co-founders of the Close Rosies movement. Gale, I've known you for, I think, 30 years. I think you were my first city councilwoman on the Upper West Side. Yep. We've definitely seen happier days together. I already emailed my testimony directly to your pipeline account, so you have it. I wanted to talk about our wish to have a separate facility. We agree with other organizers. We do agree that there should be a separate facility for women. Yep. And in this process, we've had very scant and few details from the mayor's office about what the fate of women, girls, trans, gender nonconforming, and intersex persons on the Rose M. Singer Center will be. We definitely want a separate standalone facility, but never discussed or brought into the calculus is that if we have a standalone facility, that facility has to be attached to a courthouse. One of the biggest impediments to a person's freedom once they are charged is actually getting people to go to the courthouse to testify on your behalf. When I was charged with 324 counts of the now defunct CPLR 240.30, which is the aggravated harassment statute, I had dozens of people that would come down to Center Street to testify. For me, no less than 12 times they came, waiting for my court date. I eventually got the charges dismissed and sealed, but we need a courthouse next to that women's facility. It's integral. Speaking of the women's facility, we need more than one. The biggest excuse for only building one facility is that trauma-based services are very expensive and we can't have them in all four boroughs for women. But in fact, we don't have those services for women in all 5 boroughs. We have these family justice centers, and I put the data in my testimony. The family justice centers last year only offered 65,000 appointments New York City wide. Now, every appointment is representative of 10 or 20 appointments per person. So we don't have these facilities for people anyway. And by the way, those facilities are co-located in the district attorney's offices, which anyone will tell you who's been prosecuted by the DA's offices, they would rather slide down a bed of razor blades into a pool of rubbing alcohol than step back into those facilities.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Trent Taylor, Borough President Brewer. I was a lifelong Manhattan resident before I was arrested and incarcerated. I now live in the Bronx. I would like you to know about me, what I've been going through in my life related to Rikers Island and my past incarceration for 16 and a half years. I was charged with a crime that I didn't commit, and I was remanded to jail before my trial. I was sitting up in Rikers Island for over 2 years fighting this case. The whole time my mother was visiting me in Rikers and being with me in court. My mother had a traumatic experience when visiting me at Rikers Island. She was consistently searched and spoken to in a disrespectful manner. The conditions at Rikers Island also traumatized me. I witnessed the corrections officers constantly harassing the people being held there. And I watched countless individuals beating each other up daily. The guards would see it and do nothing. It got to the point where my mother couldn't take it anymore, coming back and forth. It was too much to deal with, that place. After a while, I just got fed up. I wound up taking a plea bargain of 16 and a half years, which hurted me a lot. I took the plea bargain mostly because I couldn't stand being there and put my mother through that anymore. It pained me to think about others who are forced to sit up in Rikers Island after what I went through. I am in favor of Rikers Island shutting down as soon as possible. I support of building Borough-Based facilities to make sure that Rikers close as quickly as possible. But the mayor plans need to be improved, and I ask that you include those improvements in your vote. The size of the jail system can be even smaller than the mayor has planned for. We already got some reforms passed in Albany last week, and we're working on more. There's also the things the city can do themselves, like giving funding to create alternatives instead of short sickness, and moving people with a serious mental illness into treatment instead. Also, the Department of Correction created abusive culture on Rikers Island.
You need to
they
wrap up.
Be in charge of these facilities. Yours truly, Trent Taylor, member Justice Leadership USA.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. I just want to say the next 4 speakers are Valerie Kaufman, Andrea Goldwyn. No, I'm going to call on you. Don't worry. Andrea Goldwyn, Liz Mayers, and John Ost. And then you want to go first, and then her. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Janet Young. Actually, I spent my whole life in Wall Street. I just love making money. But this one, to me, this is a very important moment for me, okay? Now I have to speak in Chinese. 1980年後，紐約嘅唐人街已經係超越咗舊金山嘅唐人街，成為西半球最大嘅唐人街。所以紐約嘅唐人街已經唔係紐約人嘅唐人街，而係全世界嘅人嘅唐人街。OK， 而喺紐約嘅唐人街，我哋係有豐富嘅文化同埋歷史嘅。除咗孫中山嚟唐人街嚟過4次唐人街宣揚革命同埋建立民國之外咧，我哋仲有林則徐 ，OK， 佢係我哋嘅民族英雄。 佢係將鴉片戰爭嘅民族英雄。仲有咧，我哋有容宏小學，我哋係紀念容宏係我哋中國第一批嘅中國留學生啊。咁我哋有咁多嘅歷史文化，點解我哋而家要將一個好好嘅歷史文化嘅寶藏唔好好保護同埋發揚光大，而係要一步步去摧毀佢，將 Chinatown change to jail town。OK， 嗰個我係好非常之反對嘅。仲有咧，我係有日我心血來潮，我就去咗松柏老人中心，就想攞啲請願嘅簽名。咁咧，我就見到啲老人家，啲老人家已經係好老㗎啦，好多係80、90歲 ，most of them 80、90 years old. I want to ask you, I want to ask you, have you been to Chong Park Chinatown? Chong Park Chinatown? You know they are very old, okay? And none of them, I mean, basically most of them are on wheelchair, on crutches, and also they cannot really, hear properly because they have the hearing aid. And also a lot of them even trembling, okay? So I asked them, do you know about the jail project? They say yes, but they cannot voice it because they cannot come here. They can hardly walk. So I asked them, do you want me to be part of your voice? They say yes, please help us. Right. Okay? And then they even suggest to me, you say, please look at every door and try to get the vote and voice our opinion. Please help the senior.
Thank you. I feel very strongly about them and the small businesses, both.
Okay.
Both. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Next over there.
And I had 2 quick questions after I testify, Gale. My name is Kendra Clark. I strongly support the closure of jails on Rikers Island and the creation of smaller community-based facilities that address the root causes of incarceration: untreated mental health, lack of education and employment opportunities, substance use disorder, etc. I have firsthand experience of the atrocities people face while being detained and incarcerated at Rikers, as I was detained there for 4 months before being transferred to an upstate prison. The abuse, harassment, dehumanization, and neglect that takes place daily is devastating. We must do better as a society. Today, I work at Exodus Transitional Community. We're a nonprofit reentry organization based in East Harlem. I'm also a steering committee member with the Beyond Rosie's campaign and a Close Rikers member with Just Leadership. I work alongside thousands of advocates who are working to close Rikers and transform our justice system. I strongly urge the Borough President's Office to vote yes with conditions to the Mayor's Borough-Based Jail System Plan. We know that through advocacy and decarceration efforts, we can further reduce the number of beds to 3,000, which would significantly reduce the overall height of the building, as well as significantly reduce the $8.7 billion that's in the budget, not $11 billion. Please check your facts. Furthermore, we have an opportunity to reinvent the term jail, the reasons why we incarcerate people, and for what we incarcerate them for. We can use jails as a last resort and alternatives as a first, and we can ensure that incarcerated people, their families, staff members, and the community at large are safe. The current culture of Rikers must be changed. It cannot follow to the borough-based facilities in order to ensure that job descriptions of staff must match the needs of the people being served. We need less security and more mental health therapists, substance abuse counselors, educators, hard skills employment training providers, case managers, and credible messengers, people like me who have been directly impacted. We have the solutions. Now it's the time to make it reality and transform our city's justice system once and for all. Through collective leadership, our people and our communities prevail. And I just have 2 quick questions, Gale.
Thank you.
For those in the community who are saying they don't know about this or they haven't heard about this, every day there's a Board of Correction hearing, a city council hearing. Us advocates are working 24/7.
They do. People know about it. People know about it.
So
They
there's
do.
no excuse to say
People
you don't
know.
know about it.
Okay.
And then my question for you specifically, Gale, you said earlier about the community boards. I want to know how can we hold community board members accountable when they're blatantly racist?
Well,
and
hold
they,
on.
And they make racist.
Hold on. The community boards reflect good people who work hard. The 2 resolutions, I just want to say there may be individuals out there, but I can tell you those community boards worked really hard on these resolutions. They really did. Okay, thank you.
My name is Valerie Kaufman. I'm a Manhattan resident, and I'm here to urge the borough president to vote yes with conditions to this application. Closing Rikers is absolutely necessary and cannot wait, and to do that urgently, we need to move forward with this plan before us, even while we push for improvements to be made on it along the way. This is made clear to me by the directly impacted leaders in this room, many of whom you've heard from today, who have been harmed by Rikers and who have advocated for the island's closure for years. These leaders made the conversation today possible and will continue to fight for fewer people in jail and more investment in our communities, as they have been doing all along. They came to this position by mapping out all the ways we can reduce the jail population in the next few years, drawing on their experience as people who were remanded on Rikers or could have been, and considering the reality that people would remain there if this plan doesn't pass. They know the people being detained at Rikers are subject not only to the horrors of jail, which are extreme, but the unique horrors of Rikers: toxic air quality, extreme isolation from family, lawyers, and services, and extreme violence, just to name a few. Because of these considerations, I cannot understand those in this room who demand the mayor scrap this plan and simply try again. Every day, month, and year we delay means that more people are going through the unique trauma that is Rikers Island. We need to shut it down immediately. And this plan is how we do that. Directly impacted people have led us here, and we must continue to elevate their voices at this pivotal moment. This is why I am supporting this ULURP application with the important conditions that the Close Rikers campaign has outlined, conditions that include further reducing the projected jail population and ensuring that real community investments are made. I encourage you to do the same.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, before you talk, I want to call Sophia, Gale, Erica Liddell, Bill Biolowski, and Winston Negron. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Liz Mayers, and I'm a member of the Jails Action Coalition. Rikers Island, located in the middle of the East River, has since its founding been hidden from the eyes and awareness of many, if not most, New Yorkers. Owing to its inaccessibility, those held on Rikers Island suffer the painful consequences of long separation from loved ones who can offer the essential emotional support conveyed by in-person visits. Several years ago, when the benefits of visits were not paid much attention to, the Jails Action Coalition asked the Department of Correction to establish a work group made up of staff and community members to address the issue of visiting. I participated in this work group after visiting a young friend at Rikers for several years. Subsequently, some things improved, but for visitors, it remained a matter of missing work, endless waits, dragging unhappy toddlers, and frequently several modes of transportation to get from their neighborhoods to Rikers Island. Thanks to the exhaustive work of the Lippman Commission and the tireless campaign of the Close Rikers Project, the locating of jails in the boroughs where those in custody live will very significantly improve this situation. For those with children, the advantages are especially enormous on both sides. I myself have always lived in Manhattan. I am hoping that you will join me in voting to make our borough more receptive to all of those who live here, lest they continue to remain far away from those who love them. And I'd just like to add, anybody who has ever been to Rikers knows that it must be closed.
My name is Sofia Gudule, and I am a queer Latina public defender and a resident of East Harlem. As a public defender, I represent detained New Yorkers in deportation proceedings who cannot afford an attorney. I work every day with people who are incarcerated in what people here would refer to as community-based jails. Many of the New Yorkers who I represent have been incarcerated at Rikers, subjected to violence by corrections officers, lack of proper medical treatment, and solitary confinement. I'm here to say that Rikers must close now and immediately, and to say no new jails. Another attorney earlier here said he wants to talk about plans, so let's talk about plans. The plan that is being presented today is not a plan to close Rikers. Despite being asked multiple times if there's anything legally binding to ensure that Rikers closes by 2026 or 2027, I don't know which year it is at this point, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice has no answer because the plan as is has no legally binding commitment to ensure Rikers closes. The only plan here is to build 4 new jails. I also want to remind our leaders that incarceration in all forms is inherently violent. There is no humane way to lock a person in a cage. I mentioned earlier that many of the people I represent have experienced the horrors of Rikers Island. Many of those same people, and so many more people I have worked with, experience the same horrors in upstate prisons, in immigration detention centers, and in local jails. There is no such thing as a good jail. The idea of a community-based jail as being safe is a joke. A jail is a jail is a jail, just as a cage is a cage is a cage. And I just want to end by say her name. Her name is Layleen Polanco Extravaganza. She died in solitary confinement, which was being used as protective custody for her. These reforms at the margins did not protect her, and the 4 new jails will not protect future generations of New Yorkers.
Thank
Close
you.
Rikers now, and
Thank
no
you.
new jails.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking for the Landmarks Conservancy. Thanks to the Borough President for holding this forum, and thanks to all of the speakers for sharing their powerful stories. The Conservancy's mission is a little different from what you've heard tonight. It's to protect the character of New York's neighborhoods. We know the buildings, the streets, the communities that define this city. We don't oppose closing Rikers, but we can't support the proposal presented today. A new facility 3 times larger than existing buildings, it's not right for this block. 125 White Street is eligible for listing on the state and national registers of historic places. Landmarks and historic districts surround this site.
Hold on, quiet. Go ahead.
I didn't interrupt your statement. Please give me the same courtesy.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Since we don't have expertise in jails, we deferred to someone who does. We spoke to Judge Lippman, whose commission supports a borough-based jail system. His comments today echo those in an article in the Tribeca Trib, which reported his opposition to the out-of-scale size of the proposed jails. In the article, he says, the commission never envisioned the kind of high-rise facilities that now have communities up in arms. The buildings are too tall. Lippman says, I've spoken to architects who build jails around the country. They know how to do this. They know how to do it in ways that serve the community, but yet those jails are not so huge that they dwarf the community. If Judge Lippman, who wants to see new jails replace Rikers, argues against the size of this proposed facility, we hope you'll agree. The executive summary of the draft EIS states that neighborhood integration of the new facility is a guiding urban design principle for this project, but the current plan alienates the neighborhood. We urge you to oppose the proposal, but find a better way to replace Rikers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bill Bialowski. I'm an architect and a planner. I've been, this year will be my 30th year of living and working on Walker Street, just west of Lafayette. I fail to understand how building a mega jail is the solution to the incarceration problem that Rikers represents and the need to close Rikers. They just don't equate each other. We are here today to talk about a ULURP process that's adding 500,000 square feet, asking for an extended building that's just too large for the footprint that's available. When people talk about how this design might solve a problem of sightlines and things, you're foolhardy. You know better. A panopticon has been doing it since the 19th century. Not a good idea. That's the problem. We need to overcome the jail problem. Overbuilding this site is not going to serve any community member, let alone the people who are in there, one bit of good. The best thing we can do is to break this building down into as small a piece as we possibly can make. There are more sites available to us. The sanitation department occupies a building across the street. 125 White Street should be renovated. The North Tower, yes, it should be remade. As an architect and a planner, I can tell you that cities need to continually remake themselves. We need to take things down, we need to rebuild them, we need to make them better, but we need to do them in a way that's in concert with the community and the neighborhood. We can solve both problems together, though this ULURP should be turned down because it's asking for the wrong thing. We should be building smaller buildings. And I would like to say, President Brewer, I really respect your leadership here, but I would find it very difficult to continue to follow that leadership if you failed to follow the recommendations of your community boards, who are pretty much in line with making smaller buildings to solve the problems.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Winston Wen. I was incarcerated at OBCC from January 10th to about May 8th. So I've only been out for like a month. And I thank you. I have to admit I spent a little bit more time watching Game of Thrones than reading about this. So I have to admit I don't know enough to talk about square footage and things like that. What I do know is Rikers is a leviathan. It is a huge, huge institution complex that has a lot of huge problems. It's getting late. I won't repeat those. I'll only say that I will agree that they are more than overwhelming reasons to close it. I only want to offer a few smaller things because I think Rikers is also besieged by small, simple problems. I'm just going to give one example. The mail, something I talk about a lot. But if you compare how mail is delivered to MDC versus how it's delivered to Rikers, it gives you a very good example of why it's such a problem to have Rikers. If you mail something to MDC, it goes right there. You get it within 2 days. If you mail something to Rikers, it goes to a trailer, and it sits in that trailer for up to 39 days, over a month. And the mail that is sitting there is, it's mail from your family, but it's also legal documents from your lawyer. It could be, as in my case, a ballot. Right, I was trying to vote in the special election for public advocate, and I couldn't do it because the mail system prevents you from doing that. And all of this is because when you have the facilities as spread out as they are, you have no ability to conduct the mail as quickly as you need to. Right, even the commissioner's office is thinking about moving all the chaplains to one building on the island. What that would mean, though, is that they're not in the facilities as much as they are, and it's very difficult to ask someone for something when you can't find them, especially when you're incarcerated. And last, I have 19 seconds left, but even things as simple as getting underwear, right? Socks. Gale, ask me about my underwear so I can talk for a little bit more.
You're dressed beautifully, period.
From the outside. But what it means is when there are facilities like MDC versus Rikers, what Rikers will say is when I say, you're supposed to give me underwear or socks, Rikers will say, we're not a new admission facility. There's a division there.
You need to
and
wrap
so
up.
all I want to say is Rikers is a leviathan. It makes things that should be simple, complicated.
Thank you.
It makes the best intentions frustrated.
All
and the
right.
last thing is that it really just obfuscates accountability.
Okay, thank you very much. Belinda, Sue, Ryan, Aquita, Maud Marone, and Derek Biney, Amisha. Thank you. Next, whoever wants to come up next. Those are here.
Hi, good evening. I'm Derek Biney-Amisa, and thank you, President Brewer, for having this hearing. I'm going to cede most of my time because a lot of the points I was going to make have been made and made pretty well. I do want to note a couple of things. Dana's slideshow is the same slideshow I saw 2 or 3 other times in the last 6 months. In that time, I've gone to a lot of these hearings, and the conversations have been compelling. People's positions have been compelling and have added nuance to the conversation, and the slideshow remains the same. Nothing is changing in far as the development concept for this space. And it just makes me think about what the whole building development project is about. It's ultimately built on the foundation of the idea of reform. That reform is not being demonstrated. Nobody is seeing any indication of reform. There's no reason to expect new conditions in that Leviathan that you have at Rikers right now. So you call it a Leviathan. This is a Leviathan. It is. Everything you said about Rikers could be said about this in 10 years. People are saying it has to happen now. It has to happen now. Whatever happens, it's going to be fulfilled in 10 years. Are you telling me in that time a better solution than what we've been looking at? Listening to everybody who's been talking here tonight couldn't be achieved? Are you telling me that everyone here believes in criminal justice reform? Everyone here believes in human rights. Asian Americans have been discriminated, dehumanized like everyone else. People know that. It's part of the American dynamic, right? We could all work together. Community outreach from the mayor's office and leadership could actually listen to everyone who's here right now and get them into the process. You have to have the political courage as mayor or any other leader to be able to see if something is not working on such a large scale as you're hearing from the people every time you come to these things, and be able to allow yourself to rethink it, especially in these times.
Thank you. That makes a lot
Thank
of
you.
sense. I really appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Maud Marin, and I've been a public defender for over 20 years working at the Legal Aid Society. I've been to Rikers Island, I have clients right there, and I know the tombs well. I support closing Rikers Island for many of the reasons that have been articulated here tonight. I do not support building this new mega jail. Closing Rikers does not require building this jail. The conditions that led to Khalif Browder's death on Rikers can be all too easily replicated in this proposed new jail. What we need is fewer people in jail. No one should be in jail for lack of $500. No one should be warehoused in jail while waiting for a bed for a MICA program. If you're mentally ill and chemically addicted and the DA's office and your defender and the judge all agree that you should be in a program and not in a jail, keeping you in that jail while we wait to find a bed is immoral. And so I do want to mention something that I haven't heard here a lot tonight, which is the role of the district attorney's office in keeping so many people incarcerated. We need a progressive DA in New York City, in Manhattan, because the day after the slate of new criminal justice reforms were passed in Albany, I was working arraignments. I was working the day shift. And so I was kind of excited, and I was mentioning that law, mentioning the fact that there's presumptive release on misdemeanors, on a lot of felonies for which bail is routinely set in Manhattan. But the DA and the judges know that that law doesn't take effect until 2020, and they'll be setting bail on those cases on December 31st, 2019. And it's wrong. We definitely need the criminal justice reforms, and I commend our legislators who instituted it, but we need more than that. We need a DA who's a real partner in criminal justice reform. So in closing, I'll just say we absolutely need to close Rikers Island, but this jail is not a solution. Any new jail, any large oversized jail anywhere is not a solution to the problem of incarcerating too many people. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Belinda. Actually, I come here to say, I just want to ask a question. What good to us with this new jail? We talk about economy. Actually, I'm from the travel industry. I've been here for travel industry for over 20 years already. Over the past 2 decades, tourism to the New York City has swelled from 33 million to nearly 63 million annual visitors. This powerful rifles throughout the city economies. Tourism has risen to become one of the top 4 employment in our city. For those who live in this neighborhood, you can tell how many tour buses, I should say buses, passing by every day and night. Why? Because Chinatown is one of our sightseeing spots included in the itinerary. It's part of the history of New York City. If the new jail becomes the icon of Chinatown, what kind of documentary should we give out to the world? Should we give out our criminal record to the world? No jail in this metropolitan place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the chair of Community Board Number 3, Aisha Lewis Coleman, Darlene Jackson, Lynn Ellsworth, and West Murray.
Go ahead.
Somebody was before me?
No, go ahead.
No? Okay, great. I'm Lynn Ellsworth. I'm chair of the Tribeca Trust, which, yes, there is a civic association in Tribeca, and we're it. I have 6 reasons here to state why building new jails in New York City is a bad idea. Number one is that it is fiscally irresponsible to spend $11 billion on new jails, which is the figure in the Lippman Commission, so I'm using that, while dismissing and ignoring the other options of renovating Rikers as well as expanding pedestrian and ferry access. Number two, thank you. Paying developers to build these tower jails diverts money away from the more important criminal justice reforms of case sentencing, case processing, bail, pretrial diversion, and community-based aftercare. It's ethically irresponsible to do that. And third, the ULURP process and neighborhood councils have been, in our view, a Potemkin charade. DCP's refusal to modify in any way the jail plans and his decision to proceed with hiring design-build managers before ULURP is even over show yet again how DCP sees the jails as a done deal and ULURP as an irrelevant pro forma, which I know that our borough president does not. Number four, no community at this point can get a fair hearing at this particular city planning commission. Every single one of the 13 appointed commissioners is affiliated with the real estate industry or dependent upon it. Only one has a degree in urban planning. Hearings there have become a kangaroo court within a rigged game. There should be a moratorium on all text amendments until this situation is rectified. Number five, the arguments for the necessity of new jails are based on highly debatable ideas about architecture and the kind of service provision detainees require. And number six, I would suggest everyone to take a look at the imminent sale of a fine historic building at Central Park North that now serves the corrections system. The building will be converted to condos, I'm wrapping up, for their fine views of Central Park, and that is a good indicator of what will happen to these new tower jails once the justice reforms kick in and we don't have a detained population. So for all these reasons, we urge our electeds to oppose the building of new jails. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Over there. And then after you speak, Rita Zimmer, Brian Kramer, Robert Aspira, and Wayne Ho.
So how you doing? My name is Darlene Jackson. I'm a closed Riker supporter, and I'm part of the Beyond Rosie's campaign to close the Rose Epstein Center by 2020. So I know that this meeting kind of started with the death of Leyland Polanco, and I kind of want to restate that because I think that kind of flew over people's heads throughout this meeting, because I think that was the first thing that was said before this meeting even started, that somebody just, their life was taken on Friday. So when we talk about closing Rikers in this ULURP process, we actually talking about the lives of people who's directly affected by mass incarceration, Black and brown people. Because it's about more than 80% of people who are detained on Rikers are Black and Latino people. You're basically criminalizing poor people, people that's living in low-income families, poverty. People who are detained on Rikers suffer from untreated trauma, from child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, mental illness. This is what we criminalize. Your neighbors, they people, just like anybody else in this room. They are our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncles. And so when people talking about not in our neighborhood, but we support criminal justice reform, you will support any human being to have a second chance of coming back into the community with wraparound services. So when people talk about, oh, we spending $11 billion on this proposed plan, we saving $500 million by closing Rikers Island. That money is gonna be divested right back into the communities that you guys are all talking about education, about employment, mental health facilities. That money is gonna be divested from law enforcement and right back into the communities that who's directly affected. But what I really wanna point out in this conversation is the role of the Department of Corrections. Because as everyone is talking about, the crime has historically went down, right? The population of people detained has historically went down. We have all this criminal justice reform that's gonna be effective in January, which it should be now, because Leyland would be alive today with us. So I really want to talk about a serious, honest conversation about the role of the Department of Corrections, because they do play a role about the violence that takes place on Rikers Island. But I do want to recognize that they are human beings too, and they have families too, and they need jobs too. So I think that a real conversation needs to happen about what's going to happen. Well, the DOC needs to reflect what's going on right now. And it needs to start with the budget. The budget is increasing and is not reflecting all these reforms that we've been fighting for in Albany day in, day out.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Wayne Ho, the president and CEO of the Chinese American Planning Council, CPC. This is getting filmed. It's been a long night, and I want to thank everyone for being here. So CPC, we were founded in 1965 during the civil rights movement as well as immigration reform. And we always kept it within our history around this intersection of communities of color and immigrant communities. And that's why when we come tonight to testify, it's from this perspective that we serve over 60,000 New Yorkers per year through our human services, not only Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, but we serve communities of all color. Over 1/3 of our community members are Black and brown, and we want to make sure that there's equal opportunities for all. And that's why we're here tonight to join our allies to say we must close Rikers Island. We must have criminal justice reform. We must end mass incarceration. At the same time, we do not need to expand the Manhattan Detention Center. Doing so will not help those individuals that are justice involved, will not help their families. We do need to invest in communities. We need to provide services. We need to figure out different ways of reforming the system so that there is true accountability, so that DAs are not locking up more people, but that there are ways for us to have more humane centers. We need to figure out how we can have a borough-based plan with improvements so that they are not bigger, but they are more humane, they are more just, and they have the proper services so that families can stay together, they can stay in their neighborhoods, they can stay in their communities. But we do not need to see bigger, taller jails as much as we need to see more humane policies as we move forward with more criminal justice reforms and lower the numbers of individuals who are incarcerated in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. While the next speaker is coming forward, I'm going to call Noel Fries, Danielle Rosario, Christopher Marte, and Diana Say.
Good evening. My name's Rita Zimmer. I'm with the Beyond Rosie's 2020. And I think it's really important to take a moment, make a moment of silence as we think about women like Laylee, who died only 4 days ago, last Friday. And that's not that long ago. And I think it's important that we all know that life is precious. And when we lose anyone's life, it's like losing a good friend. And although I didn't know her, I think it's important to pay respect to her and to all those who have lost their lives at Rikers or any other jail throughout this country. I think, Beyond Rosie's 2020, and I just want to say, actually, thank you to Dana. I know it's about the third time or fourth time I've heard her too. And actually her numbers have come down. I think she started out with 6,000, then it went to 4, now it's at 3. I'd like to get it to 3. I'd like to get it below 3. The next time I hear you, Dana, I hope it says that you're saying 3. So, I think there has been a lot of adjustment. I think there has been interest, and I think you have been listening, and I appreciate that. And Gale, Brewer, you've been listening to us for a long time, and we go back to when you were with...
I've been listening to you, Rita, for a long time.
Yeah, right. Anyway, but I think this is an opportunity to be a win-win for all of us. The win is that we can have a jail that's built with dignity and safety and with programs that people need. The other win is that we can make those savings. It costs $304,000 a year to keep somebody at Rikers. We're going to have those savings. We can put them back in the community. It's a win-win for all of us, not just for the women and men at Rikers, but for all of us. So I think we need to pay attention that we've talked a lot about what we shouldn't have, but we talk about the way we can reinvest this money in schools and daycare centers, in senior centers, in community centers, in better housing, better streets, better lights, better opportunities for all New Yorkers, not just in Manhattan. Thank you very much, Gale.
Hi, my name is Noelle. I work in Manhattan. I'm a CUNY graduate student of public health and support No New Jails. Today we've been talking about violence within jails. It's important to note that the cycle of violence starts with poverty and racism. Both are man-made. Both poverty and racism are systematic. They are planned. We live in the second richest city in the world. According to the Vera Institute of Justice, New York City pays 3 times the amount of money to keep someone in jail as they do to put a child in school. According to the Food Bank of New York City, 2.4 million New Yorkers are food insecure. 63,000 people in New York City are homeless. If people are concerned with preventing crime and violence, we need to end poverty. We need to end racism. We need to feed, educate, and house our communities in their communities, not inside cages. These are the most basic human rights that are systematically denied to New Yorkers every day, particularly communities of color and those with low resources. As someone earlier mentioned, safety is not guaranteed by incarceration. In fact, as we've seen through Rikers and thousands of other jails, incarceration creates violence. Safety, on the other hand, is found inside healthy and resourced communities free of poverty and racism. Interestingly, if we look at countries outside of the US who sufficiently fund these basic needs, they also have the lowest incarceration rates. For an explicit and recent example, in February of this year, Los Angeles announced in February that they would close a men's facility and replace it with mental health facilities instead. New York City needs to close Rikers and put $11 billion into basic rights such as food, school, housing, mental health for communities to be safe and flourish.
Thank you. You need to wrap. Thank you very much. Christopher, before you speak, I want to call Karen Lowe, Ben Yee, Paola Chang, and Donnelly. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Marte. I'm state committeeman of the 65th Assembly District, where the proposed jail is meant to be built. I'm also a brother. My brother was in Rikers Island for 4 years. Every month, I'll take my 2-year-old nephew there, and I'll wait with him for the bus, for the other bus, for the third bus. And I know our criminal justice should be reformed and Rikers Island should be closed. That's no question. But this plan is flawed. I represent a community that doesn't really advocate or do many organizing. So we created an organization last August when the mayor proposed this plan. It's called Neighborhoods United Below Canal. Our two objectives was to understand the plan and make sure that our seniors, our children, our business owners are all heard throughout this process. We commissioned research. We analyzed data. We went to every single hearing. We conducted our own town hall meeting. And what we realized was the plan was flawed. And our community board 1 and 3, supported that action in saying no to this proposal. But for the second part, we talked to our neighbors. We talked to our seniors. We collected 5,000 petitions for people who can't be here because they can't even walk here, because they're still working, because they're taking care of their family, saying this jail should not be built here. And so I, Neighborhood United Below Canal, all the family associations in Chinatown, and nonprofits, and the 5,000 people that we had to go to door knock and see on the street all say no. So when we asked for what we wanted to hear today was community approval. The community has spoken, and they said no. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danielle Rosario. I'm Public Defender and Policy Counsel at the Fortune Society. And there's a lot of other people who can't be in this room here today. All the people who are on Rikers Island, who are in immigration detention, who are in state prisons, and who are subjected to the parole system because this hearing is going well beyond 8 o'clock, and many people have curfews who are on supervision. And so I'm here today for all of those people because they need to be heard and their voices need to be represented in this discussion, as well as all of their families and all of their children who are subsequently also impacted by the systems that confine them. And what I hear is that a lot of people are having two separate discussions. Some people are saying that jails should not be built, and that's a system that no new jails should be built, and that Rikers should close, and I appreciate that, and I think we're all working towards that. But then I also hear people on the other side of the room who really aren't in that place. You know, they're really worried about building height and traffic, and they're not worried about people's lives. And so what I see is that sorry.
Let her talk.
I don't mean to
Let her talk.
I don't mean to offend, but
Let her talk.
if you are prioritizing a paper process or worried about the respect for the ULURP process more than you are prioritizing the torture that people are facing while on Rikers Island, then we are not on the same page. This is a human rights crisis. This is the human rights and civil rights issue of our decade. And so what I want to point out is that 54% of the people on Rikers cannot be released. They are subject to confinement due to remand, due to extradition, due to warrants, and so confinement is still needed in our city. And so we need to do it in the best way possible. And building community jails is the only real option while we continue to work for reform and we continue to work towards closing the jails. But right now,
You need to wrap up. Shh, quiet, please. You need to wrap up.
I just wrap up with saying that there are 7,000 empty beds on Rikers Island right now, and so that's a defunct argument, and I hope that you will support the plan built by people with lived experience.
Okay, thank you.
For
Thank
his
you.
mission.
Thank you. Next. Next.
I'm gonna, respectfully disagree with that previous point. So I spoke at the last meeting on this at the community board one hearing, and afterwards I had the opportunity to talk to leaders on all sides of this, just leadership, folks in Chinatown, what have you. And what I found was, I spoke to Janos and some other folks who were in just leadership. Fair enough, I'm not gonna get into my time explaining the relationships that go, we all know who Janos is, we know the organizations involved, and I spoke to many of them afterwards. And what I found is that most people, basically everybody, agrees on the broad strokes, that the jail is too big, that we don't need to incarcerate so many people. And the big question is, why isn't the mayor listening to this? Right? We all basically agree, but here we are fighting each other. And the mayor is not coming back with any sort of different plan or any sort of compensation or compromise. And so we're fighting each other. And so now the question is why we have this very divisive question and how we're going to move forward. And some of us think that we need to move forward with closing Rikers by allowing the mayor to have his plan. And some of us think that we want to close Rikers but not give the mayor the exact plan that he's demanding. Now, I've been in politics and government for a long time. I've known...
Not as long as me.
I've known you for all of it. You were here first, admittedly. But I can say that if the one constant of the real world is change, the constant of politics and government is inertia. And so everyone believes that we need criminal justice reform. It's in everyone's conditions. But if we commit to a decade of mass incarceration, that's going to be the beginning and the end of reform, at least in my opinion. This is the plan. The plan is for giant prisons. And if it's not, then why aren't we acknowledging this? Why isn't the mayor coming back and saying, we have a different plan, we want real reforms and we want legislation and we want to realign the priorities and budget
Then you gotta wrap
of the
up.
city. And so the last thing I'll say then is, at a community board meeting, we can't talk about legislation, but here we can. You can introduce legislation. You can have an impact on the city council and the budget. And so what we need are real reforms. What we need are resources for psychological programs and things like that. And I would ask you to be a leader on those things. Don't make a giant jail. Have the legislature move resources where they should go.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Karen Lowe, and I think I'm the last person to speak. Maybe it's a good thing. Oh, I'm sorry, you're the last one. But anyway, it's a good thing. I'm a very simple person. So I'm not a DA, I'm not an architect, I'm not some executive director of organization. But I come into this meeting and I just noticed something very strange to me, because we are fighting against each other while the person or the entity that we should be united to fight against is getting away with things. Because it's not that we don't know about some of the facts of this whole jail thing. It is that we don't know the existence of one another, that our interests are interlinked, that we don't believe in more new jails. We think Rikers Island should be closed because the condition is deplorable and inhumane. However, how about the interest of the community that this gigantic new jail is going to be built? We need to work together. I am an old movement person. I'm just going to quote one thing, one slogan from the years past: the people united will never be defeated. So we should work together because the mayor's plan has been shut down our throat without due process and active engagement of the community and all the people's interests involved. I also want to point out one thing, that you all have been through the system and you know how the system can fool and trap and trick us. Just one example, the walkway between the North Tower and the South Tower now was a concession that was granted in 1982 when the detention center was built. It was supposed to be a pedestrian walkway. However, the correction department had took it upon themselves to make it into a parking lot. So when we talk about the small things that can be done and fixed and changed easily, how come it's not done yet? It has been in existence for so many years. This project is not a 10-hour project, not a 10-week project, not a 10-month project. It's a 10-year project. How come some of those things are not in place now? You mean they can't do it now? If they can't do it now, can we trust that it will be done 10 years from now?
Thank you very much, Karen.
Hi, my name is Don Lee. A little bit of background. My first job in the mayor's office was an auditor for alternative incarceration programs. So I'm very familiar with ADT, CEP, co-employment projects, Legal Aid Society, and most recently, Gale would know, she and I would go to 100 Center Street to fight for people to make sure they come out from jail. So I am fortunate that not being in the system, but I have helped many people who are, and one of my people I'm helping is still in there right now. But here's the thing. From today's presentation, I'm going to cut it short. I think enough said. But I do want to say one thing. As a Chinese American, when I was growing up in Chinatown, there was a tomb. By the time my daughter was born, there are 3 jails and then courthouses and everything else. So please do not marginalize, do not demonize us to say this is a NIMBY issue. We grew up in all these courts, right? So please show a little respect, all right? We respected you. But here's the good part. I think we have a solution tonight. I think we can close Rikers right now. You know why? Because the number that was given from DOC was how many? 3,000, right? That's the number, 3,000. So right now we already have community-based jail. We don't want new jail. But right now in Chinatown there are 3 jails. It's 2, 1, right? There's the 2. They can fix that right now and fix the other facilities, and you can absolutely have 3,000 beds to handle the population. So close Rikers now, right? So I think, and as someone who worked with people who are in the court of the system, the biggest challenge wasn't the building, right? The biggest challenge is getting the DA to listen, is getting the public defender who really give a, not to disrespect, I know some really care, but some don't. Right? The DA and the public defendant often left people that I try to help on the sideline and just completely ignore them. I think we can put that $11 billion right now to provide services and truly have accountability from the criminal justice system. Right now, if 3,000 is your number, we can close Rikers right now.
Thank you, Don Lee. Oh, God. So that is the conclusion. I want to say we're all, there's one more. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
There's one more, okay? First of all, no new jail. I think everybody agreed no new jail. And given the rate of incarceration decreasing, we should have less jail. We should close down actually the Manhattan Detention Center as well. We don't need that. But we are in this Kafkaesque process. So if we do build a jail, it should not be a vertical jail, right? A vertical jail has many dangers, right? I mean, we have statements from the people who do work in jail that says they don't want to work in a vertical jail because it's dangerous, right? Mr. Aborn talked about line of sight. He said line of sight in Rikers Island is very bad. Think about line of sight in a vertical jail. How many line of sights would they need? They would have 40, 50, 60 line of sights. I think that would make it 40, 50 times harder, right? Think about 30 to 50 elevators. Moving those people, it's going to take about 40 seconds to move people around if the elevators are working. That's safety. There's a safety problem, right? So we are talking about people's safety, people who do work there, people who do live there. They're going to be less safe. They're going to be less safe on every day, and they're going to be much less safe if there were a disaster, right? How are we going to evacuate? Evacuation is not going to be easy. Think about this. Moving from, let's say, Brooklyn, 80th Street, where the Brooklyn Center is, to 125 Y Street takes 25 minutes. But it's probably going to take 1 hour for buses to move. So it's going to be much harder to be safe in a disaster.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Paulo Chung.
All right. Thank you all. I mean it very seriously that every comment will be taken to its fullest, and we're going to translate those that we didn't have translation for. Thank you all very, very much. Your presence means a lot. Thank you.